Hello and welcome back to the Formula Pro Series by Traction.gg here at the Brickyard for a bit of a wet and soggy affair, but we'll get to that in just a moment. First of all, let's take you back to a couple of weeks ago at the Nürburgring and see what happened.
We are about ready to go. House on pole position, Rietveld alongside this time. rFactor 2 Formula Pro Series powered by Traction.gg is underway, and the best launch I think comes from Hanyovski. It was a terrible start from Kevin Siggy as Bonnerhouse is going to lead clearly down into turn one as they'll all go three wide. Jone Simic driving in there, but riding on board with Pajic, who's been dived and dropped down the order even behind Michi Hoyer.
And now they spread at least a bit while we got Risto Capit next to that should be Jakub Brzezinski, if I'm not mistaken.
Watch the start of not only Hanyovski, of course, we're on board with Simic. Hanyovski comes through there. A bad start from Siggy. Not a great start from Pajic as well. So we dive down the inside on board, but we're three wide at this point. Car on the right-hand side as diving through. There is Dennis Jordan, but what happened? Dicing their way through. I do get the vibe that we're going to see a bit of contact here, and that's what happened to Valeriano. A little bit of contact as well. That might have been Kasper Stolzer. It's so dicey. What happened to Jordan? Was it all by himself? Was it a solo issue? It was just coming out of this section. Was it Hoyer into the rear end? Kind of feel it's solo.
Yep, that was definitely on Dennis Jordan. Driver's error here coming out of the Mercedes AMG arena. I would say Hoyer versus Bianco Lila. I would probably put my money on Michi Hoyer right now because he is a great driver. Cursed it immediately as we get DRS opened for Bianco Lila, who takes down Michi Hoyer into turn one.
And they're going to lose so much percent of grip. As here we go, Jiri Toman. That one's surely not going to work as the outside drive from Risto Cap is enough to keep him ahead. But the cutback, switchback manoeuvre from Jiri Toman almost opened up the door for Marcel Cincic as well to come through. I only caught this out of the corner of my eye, Rene. That is a proper send down into turn one. Managed to hook it up. There's a little bit of contact here as they're just pushing so hard.
Yeah, I mean, it was a real send. If there is an rFactor 2 video that fits the send it, Alan Terzic also came in.
Oh, that's tight in the box. That's going to block the Varga guys in, and having to reverse is Jiri Toman. What a terrible round for Varga Sim Racing. That's why you want to come in by yourself. Bonnerhouse to the pit lane. Jeffrey Rietveld also. Kevin Siggy assumes the race lead here at the Nürburgring. Hanyovski, Jone Simic, all this like staying out. Jeffrey Rietveld and Bonnerhouse and Michi Hoyer all in.
With one of the GT drivers who lost his rear wing there, while we get a replay of Alan Terzic against Alex Siebel, I would say. No, it could be Dennis Jordan, actually. Basically, to get into the pit lane and not running in. Oh, look at that. That was really, really tight. I mean, he got lucky that there was probably no damage at all.
Behind Dennis Jordan after the dramas on lap one. This is how close it was between Jan van der Heide and Risto Capit. As tight as you like, and Risto Capit just not able to get there. That might be a bit of a huff.
For now, I would say Pajic, probably the quicker driver on the track.
Yeah, and that was deep from Bianca Lilla through the Schumacher S. And Pajic has come through. There's contact between them. Chop across the nose and through the middle. Birthday boy. There's your present. Up to P6, Sonny Jim.
Burst boys. What you gonna do? What you gonna do if they come for you? 5th and 6th now. Obviously, Pajic had a great drive, as we saw from the rear camera, with Stefanko now trying it onto Alex Siebel on the outside into turn one. There's still Cincic in front, so they both have to make sure that they are quick enough on the brakes, but it seems like Stefanko has the upper hand on the inside. Alex Siebel still trying to defend around the outside, but the Williams Esports driver, he will get through. Maybe he does so, and with that slots in right behind Cincic.
This incident between Pajic, you can see there Bianca Lilla a little bit too deep, going back to the inside, committing on the brakes. I mean, that's a hard one to call. I think it's just Pajic just isn't really there. I think there's maybe just enough room given by Bianca Lilla, but it's kind of one of those things where, as there we go around the outside, that's a superb move from Stefanko trying to make one up once again. Might be able to make a couple of moves in a couple of laps. Don't know where this pace has come from for Williams Esports, but on the rear end of Marcel Cincic trying to work it through, that could be a disaster, because if that's a 10-second time penalty or something in that vein, that'll be huge. Michi Hoyer about to lose a position, gained a couple of laps ago, and Jakub Brzezinski on return to Formula Pro, diving it to the inside at turn one, and trying to make the move stick as we cut back to, there is Brzezinski.
Let's hit a bit higher. and allowing us to see a bit better and then judge their driving and their diving.
Look at that dive from Yuri Toman around the outside. A little bit of contact there. That wasn't so pleasant from Danny Kish. That one might not be viewed too well. This looks like it's going to be fairly sorted, especially with that snap from Danny Kish. Surely Yuri Toman is going to pass here. Got the outside once again on the run down into Yokohama. Got to make it stick around the outside. Is there going to be contact again? Yes, there is. That one looked a bit more like Yuri Toman was trying to cut it back in for a switch back and the run into AMG.
Yeah, one of the teams that's definitely fighting to stay out is John Lazy Esports Academy and the team Fortzilla that we have on screen. So this kind of is the fight to survive.
Imagine the pressure that all of these drivers are under. That is proper sweaty hands territory. This is Yuyovsky. I think this might be a little bit of a mistake. A little bit of a slide too deep. Whoa, nearly threw everything away into the bin there.
Let's see, the chat says already a countdown to Com's curse. Now that we said all cars are still in, Dennis Jordan around the outside on turn 1. That did not work on Muhammad Patel.
3.5 clear is Kevin Siggy over Jeffrey Rietveld. Back on board with Pajic. And there we go for the dive. Bianca Lilla potentially dropping the position. This one looked a little cleaner than it was a few laps ago when they went side by side. And that time it is completed by Pajic. No, it's the last lap of the race. They'll take a look once again at the front right. You can see it just locking there, flat spot appearing. That is not what Jeffrey Rietveld wants, and he'll be under an awful lot of pressure. 3 from 3 for Mercedes AMG Petronas. Kevin Siggy, Jeffrey Rietveld, second and third as we refocus on the battle for Risto Capit. Back up to Bunner House. Another race victory, another good points effort. Race results from the Nürburgring then. Almost complete domination from Bunner House at the top of the field with Siggy up to second position. Jeffrey Rietveld from second down into third. Mirhan Yuyovsky was applying pressure at the final moments of the race with Jone Simoncic, best result of the season in fifth. Jakub Brzezinski, the rise of the Williams to sixth.
And that was certainly an exciting race back at the Nürburgring a couple of weeks ago, but we turn our attention to a very wet and soggy Indianapolis for round 4 of Formula Pro. And that is right, it is going to be raining. Brand new car, no one's ever done a race in the rain so far, so it's certainly going to be an amazing learning point for this car. But myself, Cameron Roger, will be bringing you through some of the info that you're going to need before the race. Along with me today is Aidan Millward. So Aidan, how are you feeling?
I'm interested in this one. I took the car out in the wet last night around this track, and I think Wayne Gretzky would be more at home in this thing than the Formula Pro drivers, because it is like a hockey rink out there. The car's just got so much torque, very little grip, and trying to get all that down. So it's about setup and how progressive you can be with your right foot on this thing. But the track's difficult at the best of times, especially that chicane at turns 5 and 6. So they're going to have to be extra careful. But with the way that the real road works in rFactor 2, we might see just a smidge of a dry line appearing, provided that they can just keep the pace up and keep together.
It's going to be very tricky conditions for these drivers. This track is very flat, and a lot of the corners, they're very traction limited, and obviously in the wet conditions that just makes it even more difficult for the drivers. And because they knew in the last sort of couple of days that the forecast was looking wet, I'm sure they would have been practicing and they would have sorted out a wet setup, but that still doesn't make it any easier, and I'm sure we're going to see a few spins and bits of action today.
Yeah, the car does like to spin on throttle as well, and some of these corners as well, you try to trail brake into the corner and you just sort of overload the front, too much weight over the front, it makes the rear just want to step out. As we go to the sort of drone cam footage of this track, going clockwise around the track as opposed to anti-clockwise as they do on the oval, turns 1 and 2. It's sort of like an S-bend, then turn 3 quite long, but then you sort of brake and turn for turn 4, which can throw the rear end out, and then the curbs at 5 and 6 can also unsettle the car. But then you get a bit of a breather for turn 7, and then 8 and 9 understeer central. Turn 10 you can cut quite a lot before the game tells you off, and then 11 takes you slightly back onto the oval and then into what people argue should have been there in 2005, the little snake pit section that brings you out just before the banking of the oval turn 1, and then across the yard of bricks at the end.
Yeah, Very difficult track indeed. So let's get a bit of a lap on board with Lim Deval to see just how difficult it is. You see the wet conditions already for the preview lap, such is the way of the forecast. But you can just see the amount of sort of steering lock that you have to put into it. The front is a lot less reactive, and you really have to make the car work for it a little bit more. Even with a bit of a so-called wet setup, it's not going to be easy at all. And some of these curbs are really big, and if you get it wrong, you're going to be going for a bit of a spin.
Yeah, the traction on curves isn't very good in the dry, let alone the wet. And then the hard braking zone, just seeing Liam on the brake and just sort of being very careful with the throttle and sort of wrestling with the wheel just to find all the grip he can. It's almost like driving a go-kart as he comes through the bit I described as being understeer. Now, look how much you can cut there before the game tells you off, and then that kick of oversteer again. Try not to get too much power down on the curves to avoid spinning, and then just the car even wants to spin through the lightest of kinks as he slows it up for the infield section that sort of allows the cars to bunch up together, and then through this late apex left-hander that takes you what should be a flat-out blast towards the bricks that form the finish line.
And you can see he's barely on the throttle coming through that final corner. As you said, normally be pretty much flat out, but not in these conditions, unfortunately. So the driver's going to have a bit more of an awkward time here at Indianapolis. And you can see the calendar on your screen. So we started way back in July for Spa-Francorchamps before going to Silverstone and the Nürburgring, and now into the second half of the season. We've got Indianapolis before we go to the newly revamped Zandvoort in a couple of weeks, and then finishing in Monza. So this second half of the season is certainly going to set up a nice end to the first ever series of Formula Pro.
Yeah, we've got the very fast Indianapolis, and then the sort of tight and twisty, almost Hungaroring-like nature of Zandvoort, which, like you say, has been revamped with banked corners and things like that. So we've got two tracks with banked corners, and then the Temple of Speed at Monza. So we've got three quite different tracks to end the season with.
We have indeed, and today I think with all these sort of lower speed corners that we have here, it's going to be very difficult indeed. But let's have a look at the tyre strategy. So because it is wet, the normal tyre rules that we see with the mandatory pit stops and starting on your qualifying compound aren't being activated. So the drivers can basically do whatever they want, but for the most part that's going to be on the blue wet weather tyres. So if you see any of those other colours, the white softs, the yellow mediums or the green hards, then they're probably making a little bit of a crazy decision. So look out for those blue wet tyres. And the strategy is going to be a bit interesting because with the wet tyres you're a lot slower. If you're good with the rear tyres especially, you can probably get towards the end of the race, but there's refueling. So you will then have to take a whole hour's worth of fuel, and then you're going to be really slow. So I think, Hayden, we might see some drivers trying a one stop, going to another set of wet tyres.
Yeah, that seems to be the way forward. I mean, you could just like double stint your wets, but there's no point because you're putting fuel in as well as changing the tyres. It's concurrent, so the tyres are being changed as the fuel's going in, like it used to be in real top-level open wheel racing, with the other name of which we're not allowed to say. But you might as well just change the tyres while you're there. It's not going to cost you any time. You know, change the tyres while you're whacking the fuel in, and off you go again, fresh rubber, and ultimately more grip.
And this is quite an interesting point for today because of the wet. With the qualifying format, is a 15-minute session, but they only have those they are limited to 6 laps. So you can either do 2 one-lap runs, or you can do a single 4-lap run. And because it is wet, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few of those drivers do that 4-lap run and they try and build themselves up to the conditions and get a little bit more used to it. Going out for 1 lap, that really puts a lot of pressure on your second lap because you have to learn the conditions very quickly. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple of people maybe trying to do a bit of a run and really getting the feel for the conditions.
Yeah, it's not like what we saw at the weekend with people like George Russell in particular judging the conditions to the exact, with the tyres and stuff, because there are no intermediate tyres. And more importantly, it's going to be continuously raining throughout this event. So there's going to be no drying track. There's going to be really no difference in grip with the water being cleared and things like that. So a single 4-lap run might be on the cards for people that want to try and build to the conditions and not have to go out again. But I think most people will just put in the minimal amount of fuel and just try and YOLO it for those 2 laps.
As the starting position will be very important indeed, because overtaking in the wet is even more difficult indeed, especially with the visibility. But here is what they're fighting for, the prizes. So $250 to the winner of each race or each round, and then that goes all the way down to $40 from everyone from 8th backwards. And then the real prize is for the team's championship. And this is why throughout the season we've been talking about the teams making sure they have 2 drivers at a very high level, because it is $5,000 for the leading team. And even if you get third place, it's still $2,000. So it's really important to be getting yourself up into those higher positions to get the nice prize money. And interestingly so far, as when we'll get to the standings, you'll see there's been a lot of teams that have only had really one driver standing out.
Yeah, it seems to be that way. I mean, it's kind of like real racing. You have your number 1 driver, but there is no real number 1, number 2 driver in this, because the other teams are going to be trying the hardest for the championship prize money, as you can see there on the right hand side of the screen. So you got, like, we're just picking Rocket as an example. Jan van der Heide has been doing better than Danny Kish over the course of the season, but then we've seen, like, obviously Bonner House there at the top of the standings, whereas teammate Marga Pejic hasn't been as good as him. And it seems to be that way across a lot of the teams, that one driver does, like you say, is better than the other one, or just maybe more consistent, or because it's a new car, just adapted better.
Yeah, certainly indeed, but it's still a very tight battle at the top there. Only 3 points between Mercedes AMG Petronas Esports team and Team Redline, but then also the battle just behind them between R8G, Varga and Williams is also hotting up, and Burst Esport not too far behind them with a pretty good round last time in the Nürburgring as well. So certainly those top prizes are up for offer, but the ones we need to look at the bottom as well are in those 11th, 12th and 13th places, because they are only covered by about 4 points, and it is the bottom 2 teams that will be leaving us after this season. So Musto and Fordzilla need to be trying to get ahead of Jean Alesi or maybe even Wolves by the time we get to the end of the season.
Yeah, the great thing about that scrap there at the bottom is you've got Jacer and Musto on the same amount of points, and then Team Fordzilla just 4 points off them. So it's kind of like watching the Premier League. Yes, you've got the teams at the top fighting for the championship, but the relegation battle there is still very, very interesting to watch. So watch out for Jean Alesi, Musto and Team Fordzilla over the course of this race, because maybe one of them will get an absolutely cracking result through just circumstance, or through the fact that they've adapted to the conditions better than those around them.
And the wet conditions will certainly exaggerate that factor as well. But someone, or a couple of guys really, who have been consistent so far throughout the season has been, well, Bonner House winning the first 3 races, but then also Kevin Ziggy. He's been there always on the podium behind, but then also Jojowski and Reitveld as well. They've been sort of always at the top. Reitveld had that issue in Silverstone with the penalty that he got for speeding in the pit lane, which dropped him a little bit there, but it's still looking very close indeed. House has quite a big gap now at the front, almost 20 points, but behind them it's only 4 points between Ziggy and Jojowski, so I think it'll be a really good battle as well. But even getting towards the lower ends of the top 10, it's literally 1 or 2 points between some of these drivers, so that can very easily change with one standout performance.
Yeah, the top 2, it's got a bit of a gap between the top 2 points, but then after that it's just 1 point down. So if you're 5 points ahead of or behind the guy in front, you need to beat him by 5 positions to get that 5 point deficit back, as compared to other series where there might be a gap of about 5 or 6 points between each position. So it's looking like Bonner House is running away with it, but if he has a spin at turn 1 and gets dumped to the back of the field and can't make any inroads back up, then whoever wins has knocked a huge chunk of that points out.
Yes, certainly is. By the time you get to 3rd place in the race, after that is only 1 point per position. So if you're 5 points behind someone, you effectively need to beat them by 5 positions between now and the end of the season to catch them. And let's just have a look at some stats. So you can see there Bonner House at the top, leading the laps led as well. 95 laps so far, which means that there's only been 21 laps where he hasn't led so far, which just shows the dominance. But I'm sure we're going to see a few other drivers challenging for race wins, because Reitveld there with those extra 2 pole positions shows that he's definitely got some speed.
Yeah, Reitveld has had the speed, just not had it in the race. I think Bonner House won the first 2 races from 2nd position on the grid, and then obviously he went from pole and then won at the Nürburgring. But yeah, 95 laps led, and then the next is Rietveld on 13, then Siggy on 3, and Jovski on 5. So that will have been during pit stop cycles rather than outright pace. So Bonner House, like he had in FSR for so long, running away with it here at the minute.
Yeah, he's certainly very good with the open wheels, and I'm sure we're going to see a really good second half of the season starting here at the Indianapolis. It's going to be wet pretty much for the whole event, so we don't know what's going to happen in that regard. No one's driven in these conditions, so it's still a learning curve for these drivers and these teams. But that's it for the pre-show. So we'll take you over to Lewis and Rennie to take you through all of the action. So we hope you enjoy the race, and we'll see you next time.
Cameron and Aiden are done with the pre-show. That means we're back in the commentary booth for round 4 of the rFactor 2 Formula Pro Series. My name is Rennie Butler, and I'm joined by Lewis McLeod once again, bringing you all the action from Lewis. What looks like a bad day in terms of weather here in Indianapolis.
It is a touch wet, shall we say, but we do actually get some racing underway, as is. We don't have safety cars or anything like that. They're going to be hitting the track. They're going to be going racing around one of the most famous racetracks in the entire world. It's the Brickyard.
Yeah, it is. Indianapolis is kind of like a love-hate relationship for me, I would say. I never look at the name and feel like, oh wow, that's the track I want to race, but every time I do, or I see a race here, it's just incredible in terms of sim racing.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a wide open track. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest here. Every time I've gone racing here, I've never enjoyed it myself. It's always a nightmare. It's a tricky challenge to master in its own right. But when you've got these really, really long straights, when you come on to what is essentially the oval on the start-finish straight, that run down to turn 1 in such a tight section is always great for racing. It's why it's sort of been a staple of GT Pro the last couple of seasons. We've had fantastic races around there. And I get the feeling we're going to have a fantastic one here today. And that's not even me just bigging it up. I genuinely have hope for this one.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's like Indianapolis is a good track. I think in the open wheelers, it will be even a ton better than GTs. I think last time I drove Indianapolis was probably a wet race as well in SRCA, actually. Won that one,
Ooh.
by the way. I won the championship, actually. But
Does it matter if you win the SSC
it's like, look how I got that in there. Jimmy Ellison will be in the background, like... but never mind. So we obviously are having the best open wheel drivers here once again, and it is another race where, at least from our side, Luz, I would say, we're waiting for someone beating Bono House and the Mercedes AMG Petronas esports team, although it looks a bit more dominant in the standings than it feels like in the races we had plenty of action previously.
Yeah, I mean, the races have been very, very close. Think back to the Silverstone racing, that fantastic, when different strategies were being thrown into it, a couple of 2-stops, some 1-stops for everyone else. It came tight down to the end, but 3 from 3 for Bono House, looking very, very strong at the top of the standings. But Indianapolis has a little bit of a thing when it comes to first-time winners, and you know me, I love some stats. And when it comes to this circuit, this was actually the first location where we saw a wet race in GT Pro. That was in season 2. I wasn't 100% sure, but I did have to go back and check that one out. That race being the feature race in season 2, and that one being won by Mr. Dennis Jordan when he was driving for Evolution. Another first-time winner around here as well was Jan van der Heide on his charge to the title in season 3 of GT Pro. And as we come to the live pictures, you can tell it's quite moist.
It definitely is. I mean, we see a ton of reflections here, and that's not because we decided to really give it a polish here and make it a beautiful surface. No, it is that wet, and it's not easy with these cars. They got a ton of power. They really love to spin. We saw that on previous races, how easily that can happen in dry conditions. And now it being in the wet, it will be very interesting to see who can handle that in the best way. One of the drivers that might be a front runner in these conditions is Erhan Yovsky that we have on screen right now from Roman Grosjean Esports. He's sitting at 3rd in the Drivers' Championship, and his team is also 3rd in the Teams' Championship. So, as we're halfway through now, 4th race out of 6, he really wants to set a highlight now.
Yeah, also having that podium at Silverstone, and would like another podium. You can see it's quite busy traffic-wise. Wants to get in position where you're not really going to get involved with everyone else. And you can see him waiting, basically just saying, please don't pass me. Let me just do my own thing. I want some nice, clean space. Want some nice, clean air. Again, a reminder, they only have 2 laps in this session, which when you account for the rain coming in, how much heavier it can get, you want to go out when there's also a few other cars. We've got a drying line here on rFactor 2, and we'll watch Erhan Yovsky around this fantastic venue here at the Brickyard. Onto the start-finish straight now, and this run down into turn 1. It is an incredibly long run into a very, very tight section. You've got pit lane exit on the right-hand side. Whether that'll be used or not today, we're not 100% sure, because in wet weather conditions, we don't need to change tyres. It's not a requirement. The mandate's only switching between dry compounds, and I don't know about you, I don't think we're going to get a dry race today.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see that in terms of changing conditions. On the other hand, all wet in Indianapolis will definitely make for a good race. And as you said, they don't have to change compounds nor tires, right? So they could run on just one set, no pit stop, which would be a completely different race compared to what we normally have here in the Formula Pro Series. Jody Swear is currently out there in the pouring rain. Hopefully his cockpit is not flooding already. Ooh. Wow, that was very tight there to the wall. But he's coming across the line with a 1:18.7. He is the first one to cross the line, I think. And that's why he's actually first. Yep, that's correct. And Risto Capit immediately, is second quicker nearly. Oh, more than second, actually.
Oh, and Jan Grankvist on return to the series, jumped in for the first race last time out, and unfortunately didn't have the greatest one. Finished 26th of 26, but it does mean that we have 26 finishers across the race at the Nürburgring. Unfortunately, not really having a moment there. These conditions, this is the first time that we get to see these cars driving around in these conditions, and it's a hard car to drive anyway. It was going to be tricky around particularly this final section, regardless. Such a slow speed into this sort of medium speed corner onto such an important run. It was going to be hard anyway, but in the wet, not just doubly so, triply so. It's so difficult out there. Back on board with Bono House, trying to close down on Jerne Simoncic, and that second sector is not that great. Track position around here could be critical, whilst you can pass around Indianapolis from 5th position with all the spray ahead. That is not great for Bono House, and when you only have 2 laps in the session, now has to go on a bit of a recovery on the second half of the session.
Definitely he needs to step up his game if he wants to be in the front row today. Well, we quickly had a look at Ibrahim Khan, who is replacing another driver at Rocket Sim Sports. So we have a few of the stand-ins in once again, not Marko Pajic though. He was in the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Esports car previously already, only sitting at 19th, but I'm not sure. No, he didn't put a lap time up just yet, if I'm not mistaken. But I think the biggest challenge in terms of traction on this track is that it's so wide, as you said, and it kind of dares you to be hard on the accelerator, to risk a bit more, right? Because there's so much space coming out of the corners. But yeah, if this car starts stepping out in the rear, then you're in deep trouble.
This could be a big round as well for the likes of Jeffrey Rietveld, who goes up onto pole position on a 16.768. Fantastic lap time. Ohaniowski up to 5th. They're all moving Bunnerhaus down the order. He is in 11th spot at the moment, our championship leader. It's rounds like this, though, where you can see the big changes in the order. We were talking about how things might almost be a little bit stale on the championship side of things. Speaking of Bunnerhaus, he's gone straight up to the top. Now, this is interesting because one of the things that we've spoken about before in this championship is how, I said 2 laps, let's actually read out the rule in its full effect. You get 6 laps in this session that you can choose to use however you wish. Now, we normally see them running 2 timed laps. That is an out lap, a time lap, an in lap, and then do that again, out lap, time lap, in lap. However, in this session, we might see drivers, as we are seeing with Bunnerhaus, where they're going to do out lap, timed, and then they're in. So they're going to do 4 timed laps just to make sure they are on track as many times as they can, getting into the rhythm. And this could be very, very important for Bunnerhaus. And to throw out what happened in practice as well prior to this, the fastest lap time was done by Bunnerhaus on a 1:16.186. Of course, slightly differing conditions. We could be slightly wetter here in the qualifying session, but always interesting to note.
Yeah, definitely, he's doing a good job, and as you said, with the wets not losing as much performance as the dry compounds across the qualification, you could actually stay out. You try to get a feel for the track, right? You want to basically iron out the mistakes you did on the previous lap, but this time you don't have that out lap in between, which probably helps to dial in. Let's see if it pays off, though. Is Bunnerhaus the only one that stayed out? Because I think Jajowski did not stay out. Rietveld did not stay out. So they all went for the normal approach of only having 2 timed laps. While Jan van der Heide comes across the lines, only in 18 so far. Definitely dreaming of a bit more. Casper Stolze for John Laser Esports Academy, a team that we talked about on the previous race, already kind of struggling to really get the grips here in the championship, and yeah, looking for solutions to move up the order.
Bunnerhaus is on his final lap, by the way, if we could jump on board with that, because Michi Hoyer, session done at the moment for the German. It was birthday boy last week, but his day is done in this session at the moment. Could be looking good for a pole position. Laps also completed for the likes of Erhan Jajowski for Risto Capet. We are going to see a slow end to this session, but it is high drama right in the middle. Let's focus with Bunnerhaus, our championship leader right now, in 3rd place, coming through the final complex of corners. The wet is so tricky. It takes a masterclass to drive around here, and what better master is there than Bunnerhaus, 3 times race winner in Formula Pro powered by Traction.gg this season. Is it going to be a pole position? Yes, it is. 16.495. He jumps to the top of the order ahead of Michi Hoyer, at least for now. Kevin Siggy's charging as well. It's a decent first sector, not so great in the middle. Bit of snaps through the final corner. Can Kevin Siggy deny across the line? Not quite, but to the front row.
Yeah, he's sending Michi Hoyer down into the 2nd row. Unfortunate, because Michi Hoyer put a great lap up there, and I'm kind of sad actually seeing him being dropped by Bunnerhaus. But Bono is just the man to beat here, and especially in these tricky conditions. Fiducci is struggling with the rear end on his car, that's for sure, here in the Team Fordzilla Formula Pro, losing a lot of traction, not really getting the momentum going for him, and that means he won't improve on his lap time. So does Nuno Pinto, 24th only for a driver that we always expected, especially in GT Pro, to be better than the results he's showing.
I think we might be in podcast time, by the way, for the final parts of this session, because I actually think that there is no one except Jan Grankvist that really has lap times to deliver us in the final 6 minutes and 15 seconds. Will catch us across the line, though, as everyone was trying to get out in the potentially slightly dry conditions. We've already got plenty of stories to talk about. Nuno Pinto bails out of that one from Team Fordzilla. Let's speak about Team Fordzilla just a little bit here, because Gianmarco Fiducci, a driver who set after Silverstone after making contact with his teammate in pit lane, and a couple of other issues, struggling to get to speed with the car, being back towards the rear end of the grid, is 7th on the grid. Position 7, he's stuck with it. He's buried this car around this circuit and up inside the top 10, and very comfortably so as well. And for a driver who I know doesn't really race too much in wet weather conditions as well, that is mightily impressive. We'll take a look at this lap from Bunner House, but wow, there are some stories to talk about in this session.
Definitely. I mean, it's a championship that always delivers in terms of excitement and action on the screen as well. Well, I have to say, Aidan Millward, after being out with the pre-show now, says Pinto got DQ'd. Could that be because he ran too many laps?
Could be. I mean, the DQ normally comes from, it does say 7 of 6. Now, this could be because he was maybe missed the pit lane entry, and if you hit escape once you're past a certain point on the racetrack, then it does count that lap, of course, as it should, because you can't just magic that one back, and so it is an extension of too many laps done in the session, and so Nuno Pinto, yes, towards the back end of the grid. Bunner House, keeping an eye on this lap, looks butter smooth. Bit of a snap there, but nothing too major, putting all 800 horsepower down onto the racetrack. The fantastic noise being brought back to Indianapolis once again.
I just love how smooth he is in terms of counter steering, right? It's not these quick reactions that we normally see. It's really super slow-mo, but it looks like a Ruben Correa Alves slow-mo if we watch his steering wheel while counter steering, right? And that's very unusual, I would say, especially on such high-powered rear-wheel driven cars.
Absolutely fantastic from our championship leader, and that could be the time that's going to be set for pole position. There is, like I said, as far as I am aware right now, there is absolutely no one that can put a lap time. Martin Stefanko is currently out on circuit, but I think he's more on a bit of a messy lap. I've been watching it through, and it's very, very scruffy. We'll see what Kevin Siggy did to get into second position, and it seemed like a very fast first sector. Dropped off a little bit of time in the second, and that would be where it all kind of slipped away. There's still 3.5 minutes left of the session. Whether they're going to skip through the end of it, I don't actually know. I think they're going to run out the timer on it. But all things considered, that session done. And it is back-to-back pole positions for Bunner House, his second one of the season, looking for a 4th win.
By the way, wasn't the second sector of Kevin Siggy even down by half a second? And he still managed to put the car in the front row. I think it was 0.648 or something like that.
I think it might have been 0.0.
Okay, maybe I saw that wrong.
10th.
Yeah, okay. Because I would have been really surprised, like half a second in sector 2 and then still managing to put the car in the front row. That would have been even more impressive, but they already do an impressive stuff here with these times in the wet. And it will be very interesting once we head into the race, because first of all, it's Formula Pro, so we're back to standing starts. There's no flying lap whatsoever. And we're running down into a nice turn 1. And in these conditions, although it's very wide, it will be tricky because everyone still wants a good exit no matter what.
It's, getting these cars off the line at the best, for the most part, it is hard, even in the best of conditions. And obviously what we have today would be regarded as not the best of conditions. Maybe for entertainment, from our point of view, it's fantastic, because we will get our race start. No delays on that part here. We'll be jumping into it in a few moments' time once the qualifying session has completely finished. Once they've got themselves ready for the race and then jumped into it, we will be ready to go for another hour of racing here, and like I say, it's putting all of that power down onto the grid. Now, we've seen some drivers nail the starts on a consistent basis, and I remember going back to the previous round and seeing Siggy start on what is a fairly large run down into turn 1 at Nürburgring. It's a much longer run here. Now, if you make a start that's it wasn't great, we'll go with that. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't great. If you make a start like that here, you are going to lose a ton of track position, an absolute ton. It's hard to get that back when you're trying to spot your braking zones and stuff through all that spray.
And there's also not the, Nürburgring kind of helps you out, right? You got the dip on the inside of the corner, so no one really wants to be there. If you're running around the outside, you can be fairly quick. And it has a similar left-hander right after, just like here in Indianapolis. But I just think Indianapolis Turn 1 does not offer as many lines to be quick at the start as Nürburgring does. So you have to be on point, and as you said, you have to be quick with getting off the line. If you don't do so, that straight will really punish you, and you will drop down a lot. And then on the break-in, it's even more messy. All of a sudden, you've got cars around you that are a bit quicker into the braking zone, so you try to brake later, but that obviously kind of destroys the timing of everyone else, and that makes it even more dangerous.
Yeah, once again, to go back to the tyre rule as well when it comes to the race, it's in a same sense when it comes to elsewhere in the real world of motorsport. When it comes to wet tyre usage and the tyre allocations, we had it introduced for the first time last round, where we know that a pit stop was required. I'm pretty sure there might still be a pit stop required, but I need double checking that one from Jimmy Allison, because we did have a pit stop required before, but they never needed to switch compounds of tyre. Now with round 3 onwards, they had to switch. If it was dry compounds, they had to switch compounds, of course. Whereas now there is no requirement to switch compounds. So as far as I'm aware, they could get through the race. I think though the tank would not be able to take it to the end of the race, but again, I'd need a bit more info on that one. What we will say though is seeing the top 3 laps side by side, which is always great to see, seeing the difference of smoothness, of aggression. You can see Michi Hoyer there struggling with traction on the car, and let's just talk about Michi Hoyer here. What a fantastic qualifying session from the Season 1 GT Challenge champion, someone who does like a bit of wet weather conditions. Took his first win in GT Challenge in the wet weather conditions at Silverstone in the very, very first round.
He's definitely someone that excels under these conditions, and he's doing a great job no matter if it's in GT cars or if it's here in the Formula Pro. So kudos to him. I think he's a great driver that both esports picked up there. And here to remind everyone out there what actually happened, we had the 15 minutes of qualification already, and we heard it's either a single 4-lap run or 2 1-lap runs. That's what Lewis was explaining previously, and then from there on, only brakes, engine, steering, and front wing can still be changed in terms of setup. So you can't really run qualification setup or even 2 setups like a similar other racing title out there in the world. That's not possible. Instead, you have to live what you put up on the car for qualification. And race start compound rules will not be enforced during wet conditions, so there we go. We're not forcing them onto medium hard or soft.
I think we should.
Fun, no? we should. And then mandatory pit stop rules will also not be enforced during wet conditions. So now these guys could go for 60 minutes flat out racing, which changes a lot in terms of strategy and how you want to start the race and actually go into the fights as well.
Getting the information from Jimmy Allison and Cam Roger as well. Obviously, as you can see there, they're not forced to pit. It's not, it's mandatory. That requirement is out the window. We don't need to focus on that whilst it's a wet weather race. So they can go to the end of the race. But the fuel, as much as it's okay, you can do it. The tank will do it. You have to drive a little bit more cautiously. You have to drive a little bit more in control of the car. I'm reckoning that a couple of teams will do so, but also as much as it's wet weather, tyres do still wear. It's not as if they're a magic compound, and obviously one of those things, as much as you can read into it what you will, obviously in the real sense, the soft compound of tyre is the wet compound tyre is the softest compound. From a technical point of view, it is the absolute softest compound. So if you were to get a session that dries up, it's why they burn out so quickly when we have a drying session. So we might still see pit stops. We might see them just burn out over the wet weather conditions anyway, especially if you get a couple of flat spots and such, which is so easy to do in conditions like this. So we're not ruling out pit stops. I still think we might get them. What we're seeing here, though, is, of course, the warm-up session. So they've brimmed the tanks. They're getting themselves ready for the race, and we're going to start seeing some actual race lap times and potentially some pit lane entry practice.
Yeah, everyone will now try to run on a full fuel tank just to see how it changes the balance of the car. And as you said, it is important to nail your pit entry in case you have to go there, because on the previous races we had a few instances where drivers got drive-through penalties, right, because they have been too quick, not activating the limiter when coming across the line, then accelerating over the speed limit again. And I'm absolutely sure everyone will be aware of that by now and tries to avoid mistakes other drivers did already on camera.
I mean, it's one of those, it's very, very easy to do. Also, you have to think about it this way, and it's something that not too many people think about in wet weather racing and stuff, particularly when if you've not practiced it and such, or maybe not done too many wet races. It is, of course, you've got 26 cars in these conditions driving around, drying up the track. Now, whilst the rain persists, there is a differential still, even then, of course there is, between the drying line, or let's just call it the less wet line, which we will refer to as the dry line, even though we know it's not, between the less wet line and between the actual wet track. Now, when you come into pit lane, this is a part of the track which hasn't been traversed. Thus, it's wet. It is difficult to get into, and you'll see a couple of drivers, particularly if we do see those pit stops in the wet, they'll either be unbelievably cautious in pit lane due to the fact that it is wetter than the racetrack you've been racing on, or they'll overshoot their box. So you're going to see one or the other, and you can see here as well as you ride on board with Jeffrey Rietveld how heavy the rain is.
Yeah, it is definitely pouring out there, and it doesn't look like it will stop anytime soon, so I'm pretty sure we got the 60 minutes of rain racing. Luckily, as you said at the beginning of the show, we will actually race, so we won't let you guys sit out there now and wait for a few hours, and then we'll show you 2 laps of just cruising around. Instead, we will see them at race pace and going for the big championship points. And since it is halfway through, and they only 2 races after this one, if you want to get the top spot off Mercedes-AMG Petronas esports team, if you're Redline and RHA Esports, it better start now, otherwise you're too late.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, when it comes to those two in the team standings, they've been absolutely fantastic. Of course, we know the strength of Bunner House taking the championship lead after 3 consecutive race victories, looking for a 4th today after a first pole position as well at the Nürburgring, and now taking a 2nd one today. In the team standings, it's still a lot more open, just 3 points separating the top 2 teams. Payich and House, of course, at Mercedes-AMG Petronas, and Team Redline having Kevin Siggy and Jeffrey Rietveld. Of course, Kevin Siggy's had 3 consecutive podiums. He's 2nd in the championship and has had those podiums to bring him right into the mix. Now, not that I feel that this is a fair thing, because I do actually like Marco Payich. He's a great guy and a very talented driver. But if you are to point a finger at Mercedes, Bunner House has not done anything wrong. He's won all 3 races. Payich, though, has struggled to put a foot right necessarily, and yes, some of that's not through his own fault. He had the issues with the technical side of things at Spa, shall we say. Hasn't got a podium yet this season, though, which is not what they would have expected.
It's kind of like what we know from the real world, right? Struggling to get the second driver in line with what's capable with the car and setup they're running. Bunner House, he always delivered, no matter the lap, no matter the track. But he will need backup of his teammate. Otherwise, Siggy and Rietveld, they look like a strong combination. Way stronger to me than Nurowski and Capit, although both are great drivers. I kind of have the feeling it's always one of them is good at that track and the other one isn't.
Yeah, indeed. Well, with a day like this and some of the qualifying, it may be looking not so great for Mercedes-AMG Petronas as well, once again, as Payich has struggled in qualifying once more in the tricky wet conditions. Let's take a look at the race starting order for the 2nd consecutive time. We've got Bunner House on pole position with Kevin Siggy alongside him, and an all-burst 2nd row of the grids, Michi Hoyer and Jerne Simoncic. They are getting stronger and stronger as the season goes on. Then we find Erhan Yovski and Jeffrey Rietveld with the season best qualifying from Gianmarco Fiducci up in 7th position, a fantastic one from him, and Risto Capit for RHG runs off of 8th. Mohamed Patel and Dennis Jordan taking his first race victory in conditions like this in GT Pro with Yuri Toman, and this is where we find Marco Payich, 12th position, not great, and another not great qualifying from Varga Sim Racing, 11th and 13th for Marcel Chinchik. Welcome back Petr Berliak and Martin Stefanko to Williams Esports as Manuel Biancalilla starts from 16th. Ibrahim Khan jumping in for Rocket Sim Sports, replacing Danny Kish this round after a bit of an injury, with BS Competitions Michele D'Alessandro, Alex Siebel and Jan van der Heide roll out on row 10. Liam Duval, not great again, struggling with the second half of this season, or even after round 1. Giordano Valeriano behind him with Jordi Viers and Nuno Pinto, 23rd and 24th. Jan Grankvist and Casper Stoltz round out that grid. I mean, look, it's wet out there. We don't really know what to predict, and I wouldn't even know where to begin. I don't even know if we're going to see pit stops this race. What a fantastic prospect.
Yeah, I think we got enough to sit through 60 minutes and still wonder about what happens on the very last lap. And I have to say, kind of sad to see Kasper Stolzer once again at the end of the grid. I mean, his results kind of showed the same Nürburgring race result, right? He was 25th, only Jan Granqvist was behind him. And is he not getting dialed in with the car? He's a good driver. So what's stopping John Alesi Esports Academy right now from scoring proper points here?
Yeah, they're in a bit of the danger zone. Whilst we focus on the upper ends of the championship, we also can't forget that the bottom two teams in the championship will get demoted, which at the moment is Team Fordzilla and Musto GD Esports. John Lacey Esports are just ahead of that in 11th spot in the championship, but with a fantastic, sensational qualifying from Gianmarco Viducci to put Fordzilla inside the top 10. Things could be looking a little bit worse in that sense. We've passed the halfway point of the season, though, and we are back home again in Indiana. And once again, one more hour of racing in thrilling wet conditions for the very first time in the rFactor 2 Formula Pro Series powered by Traction.gg. We'll say it again that Bonner House is on pole position, looking for his 4th consecutive race victory. Kevin Siggy, second in the championship, lines up alongside with an all-burst second row of the grid. We're underway at the Brickyard, and it is a great launch, it seems, from Kevin Siggy, who's got straight into the slipstream of Bonner House. They've left the burst drivers at bay, and on that run down into the first corner, Kevin Siggy's gone to the outside. Bonner House holding the inside, and he's gone straight on. Mercedes are absolutely out of here, and Kevin Siggy coming through to take the race lead. As are the two burst drivers, it is chaos for Bonner House. Erhan Yoski diving it through here as well, and it is backwards for House.
Definitely something we did not see previously. I mean, we always say Bonner House never does a mistake. At least we never catch it on camera. And now he does here in such a race that he has to be on point. Right in the first corners, running wide. He tried to block off Kevin Siggy, and that did not pay off for him at all. Had to go over the grass, dropped all the way down to 4th. I mean, for Bonner House, that's all the way down. Someone that's normally always leading the race. And now he's under pressure by Michi Hoyer, who had a great qualification, who has a great pace, so he might be able to put up a bit of a challenge. Yovsky in front of House, also not a driver you just pass easily on a Sunday drive.
And do you want to know what, though? This shows how the quality of this field. We come through lap 1, and everyone's still going. Fantastic stuff in the trickiest conditions possible, especially with that spray as we ride on board with Michi Hoyer. After dropping down a little bit from 3rd place, he'll be a bit disappointed, but now getting back into the rhythm of the race. We are fully underway here at Indianapolis. Such a great grid. And Jerne Simoncic, got to say, what a start for him. Up into 2nd place. Started from 4th, of course, with the issues for Bonner House, and then the issues a little bit for his teammate getting to grips. Kevin Siggy is running away right now, and this is big for the team's championships. We're seeing a bit of side-by-side further down the order. Valeriano and Kasper Stolzer, there's a little bit of contact. And Stolzer, I've been watching him drive around the opening lap of this race. He's been sideways basically every corner. Coming into the pit lane, Alex Sewell and Manuel Biancalilla.
Yeah, it seems like they got a bit of damage, because that's definitely not the pit window you normally want to be in, especially since it's not mandatory this time around. Simoncic, great start, staying in 2nd now behind Kevin Siggy, but Yovsky is putting a ton of pressure on him. Not easy at all, and it's so sad to see. And Simoncic is without the support of his teammate, that is Michi Hoyer, because Hoyer just dropped down too early here in the race. And look at how Yovsky, he shows himself left, right in the rearview mirror, making sure that Simoncic can never really concentrate on Kevin Siggy and trying to close the gap. Instead, he has to be all over the rearview mirror and check where he has to defend there.
Yeah, Siggy's absolutely checked out now to the tune of around 2 seconds. Erhan Yovsky, the Macedonian, to the inside of the Slovenian on that run into turn 1, and Jerne Simoncic doesn't fight it. Simoncic denied race victory for the first time in GT Pro. He was coming out of it. I say denied, it's probably the wrong word to put with it. He gave it up for his teammate Michi Hoyer on that run to the line in very wet conditions at Sebring just a week ago. Hoyer taking victory in the first race. It could have been Simoncic's first one in 4 seasons. Dropped back. Yuri Kazdorp, though, did come through for Red Bull Racing Esports to take his first victory after 4 seasons in the second race. Now we ride on board with our championship leader, winning all 3 races of the season thus far, and it seems like winning this race might be a bit of a challenge, but it's definitely not over in that sense. We know the speed of the Flying Dutchman, who has been so dominant in open wheelers all over his career. That is a decade-spanning fantastic run that Bunnerhaus has had. He's a sensational driver, been signed to the Mercedes AMG Petronas team for a little while now, and showing why. Oh, there's a bit of contact with Pajic.
Yeah, that gets really tight here. Pajic has to drop down to 12th again. That's where he started. He moved up to 11th previously, but as we can see now, not really up to the pace that the drivers around him are running. Bunnerhaus now behind Simoncic. Got rid a bit of Hoyer, and that's his first look into the inside of Simoncic. Jovski made it through. We saw that previously. Simoncic not really defending, just trying to keep the car on the track and just keep on going. But Jovski's also a lot quicker because they really created a gap already. This might be crazy between Jan van der Heide and that's D'Alessandro at the front, and Jordi Sweers with his teammate Casper Stolzer right behind. But once again, it's those fight for 20th, 19th, 18th, where we normally don't expect Jan van der Heide to be.
Yeah, of course. The last time he visited this circuit at Indianapolis, it was the best day it could be. It was a championship day for Jan van der Heide in Season 3 of GT Pro in much more favourable conditions than this. Bunnerhaus, as you're absolutely right, behind Simoncic, and seeing Erhan Jovski disappear down the road. It was a fastest lap over the previous lap from the Macedonian, closing down on Siggy. This is fantastic pace from the R8G, 2-time GT Pro champion. And whilst we've seen this in sim racing before, for the likes of you elsewhere in sim racing, you might know the battles between Max Benecke and Josh Rogers. Well, in this sense, our rivalry in rFactor 2 definitely comes between Kevin Siggy and Erhan Jovski. They fought for 2 championships in GT Pro. There's the dive to the inside from Bunnerhaus, up into 3rd position, and Simoncic is trying to get one back on him, but the Slovenian not able to do so. Lets the Dutchman go. Jovski, though, is catching Siggy. This race is absolutely on.
Yeah, I thought it will take a little bit longer for Bunnerhaus to make a comeback here in terms of the front row, but he now has open road and can try his best to catch up to Jovski, who seems to be a lot quicker than current leader Kevin Siggy. So we might see another change in terms of leader of the race, but Bunnerhaus, if there is someone that can make it happen in coming back from such a mistake in a high-class grid as this one, it is him. And to be honest, in terms of how we see him passing everyone and getting through the grid, it will be hard for Jovski and Siggy to stop him.
Yeah, indeed. This just shows the pace that Bunnerhaus has. Let's take a look at this replay as we ride on board with Bono. It's just a send to the inside. I mean, in the consideration of what happened on lap 1 down into that corner, that is brave. Really understanding the grip level the car has. Gap came down another 0.2 as Jovski closing down once again, focusing on 12th places. Unfortunately, Marko Pajic is not able to take advantage of this race, and you can see the top 10 pulling away. Marcel Czinczyk and Yuri Toman have moved up a couple of positions in the early stages of this race, inside the top 10 now after a poor qualifying for a team that was running 3rd in the championship a bit earlier in the season after the opening couple of rounds, and they really did struggle at the Nürburgring and seeming to struggle once again here. Ahead of them, Risto Capet. Ahead of him, as we ride back aboard with Jeffrey Rietveld, is this battle for 5th position with Hoyer. But don't count out, and I was a little bit worried as to whether it might have just been the lap that comes together. From the pace that we've seen from Fiducci so far throughout this season, Fiducci is absolutely hanging on in that battle for 6th place. He is sat on the rear end of Jeffrey Rietveld, and if Rietveld makes a mistake, the Italian, the feisty man, he will be through, and he knows how to make moves. He's built his sim racing career from touring car racing. So I'd suspect there'd be a move on the horizon as we complete yet another lap with Siggy leading Yayovsky, and Yayovsky not quite close enough to make anything stick down into turn 1.
Yeah, he isn't close enough to really attack, but he's close enough to make sure that Kevin Siggy knows he's not quick enough to really stay the leader, unless he's great at defending. That's Rietveld against Michi Hoyer. A nice pass here. Big respect by both drivers once again, making sure that this actually works and no one ends up in the barriers or on the grid. We'll jump back to, that was Risto Capit, by the way. Now we're on board, though, with Erhan Yovsky. Same looking car, different driver. And look how Yovsky is charging onto Kevin Siggy around the outside now. Kevin Siggy was trying to defend the inside. Whoa. Might have the upper end going to the next one. Yovsky nearly losing the rear there. Got lucky to catch the car again. And for now, at least, Kevin Siggy stays up front.
God, get a Ruben Carrera a slow-mo of that. See how close Yayovsky was to clip in the grass as well. And that would have been an insta-spin. Yayovsky means business here. Having one podium so far in the season, obviously all the race wins have been hoovered up by Bono House, just collecting them all the way through. This is their first opportunity to do so. He's closed up a second, though, to this top lot. That's a little bit of a mistake, though, from Erhan Yayovsky, and not able to make a move stick on Siggy down into turn 1. Just understeer, bit of slipping and sliding. I think Rietveld, though, might be under pressure from Michi Hoyer as we focus on Risto Capit on the rear end of Fiducci as well. Here comes Hoyer to the inside of turn 1, diving it down there. And one lap, they switch. The next lap, they might well be switching again. Fiducci able to keep Capit at bay. Hoyer able to get by on this time, at least. Looks to be a way clear.
Yeah, that was once again a great maneuver, and we still see them side by side right behind this duo fighting. But this is to start from Johnny Simich's position, so he started in 4th. That's Michi Hoyer to his right, and for whatever reason, Michi Hoyer really lost out on the start. So Kevin Siggy immediately went into the slipstream of Bono House. I mean, we thought that from his perspective at the start.
Yayovsky's round. Sorry, I know we're not coming back to this, but Yayovsky is round. What has happened to Erhan Yayovsky?
Oh, he dropped down to 8th position, so it was a major spin, and he's fighting now with Chinchik. And who's behind that? That's Yuri Tillman that also wants to get involved. And then it's Patel behind. 4B is competition, but yeah, Yayovsky looking like the guy who could be leading the race in front of Bono House very, very soon. It's now once again following. Let's take a look at the replay here.
Too deep.
Oh yeah, he was too quick onto Kevin Siggy, and then afraid they will touch the rear and then spawn out on the exit. Bit too feisty on the accelerator, a bit too much weight up the front, obviously, as he was standing on the brakes, and that led to a spin. And now he has to have a comeback, just like Bono House had one, and he's starting it with a fight against Yuri Tillman here for 10th position.
Yeah, Toman's just slipstreamed him down into T1, but the Macedonian able to hang on from Toman at the moment. Disaster as we ride back on board with Gianmarco Verducci now challenging for a top 5, and in good spot for it as well, in good spirits is the Italian. I know he'll be absolutely pumped right now. A driver, I mean, I wouldn't expect a grim move from him. I know there are certain drivers that may well assume that, but let's be honest, with Gianmarco Verducci coming from a touring car background, I've seen plenty of drivers. He's got a great head on his shoulders when it comes to making overtakes. Will not go for something unless it's absolutely on, unless there's a mistake, of course, which can happen to everyone. But Verducci right now, like I said, in a great spot to challenge at the moment Rietveld, and potentially even in the train for the podium battle, because Simincic, Hoyer, Rietveld, Verducci, Capit, they're all in this tight train as well that still goes back. Even to the biggest gap, as Erhan Yayovsky is the big gap between him and Chinchik as he's defending from Yuri Toman. At the moment, Siggy and House, they are matching each other on pace. House is closing in just a little bit as Toman. This looks like a done deal. Slam dunk move from Yuri Toman to the inside on that run into turn 1. And for Erhan Yayovsky, this is going from bad to worse and potentially even more so.
He's still side by side though with Yuri Tillman, but being on the outside there, no chance for him to really have a strike at Yuri Tillman and getting 9th position off his hands. And as you said, he was meant to be leading because he was definitely quicker than Kevin Siggy, and now he has to fight to at least stay inside the top 10. We talked a bit about Fiducci, obviously had a great race so far, while we see Risto Capit against Marcel Chinchik. Capit has to defend against the Varga Sim Racing driver. Varga Sim Racing, by the way, currently in 4th position. Obviously, Cinchik spinning around all on his own, losing control here of his Formula Pro car, and off he goes, basically doing another Erniowski, and has to find himself way further down the track currently.
I cannot describe to you how difficult these conditions are. They're hard in most cars, but in a car with this much power, 800 brake horsepower, and basically just instant torque, they just spin up so fast in tricky weather like this, where controlling the rear grip that's going to those rear tyres is so immensely difficult. Looking backwards from Rietveld, Fiducci, the Italian, diving it to the inside, looking for a top 5. Welcome to Formula Pro, Gianmarco Fiducci. He's trying to get inside the top 5. He's going to complete the move on the Team Redline driver, and Risto Capit's knocking at the door now, and he's instantly going for it. That's a mistake, and Rieveld's round.
Oh, horrible there. That move wasn't really on. It was a bit late there to dive up the inside. And what I wanted to say in terms of standings, it's the worst that could happen to Kevin Siggy. I mean, he's currently leading the race, but his teammate is nowhere near the top 3 currently to really reel in the big points. And it's not getting any better. There's a car going off. So that is Risto Capit losing it, and Erniowski coming through. So one RHE driver helping the other one, but that's definitely not helping for their standings, as they're currently in 3rd in terms of the team points. But yeah, it is a race that is spectacular. We said it will be, and it definitely did not disappoint in the first 15 minutes so far. But there are a ton of fights going on. But the drivers, the more they get heated up, the more they have to be reminded that it's still super wet out there. And I think there's the next contact.
This is absolutely crazy, obviously, with the wet weather conditions providing its own level of difficulty. And yeah, some drivers just chopping and weaving. I'm not sure which one it was that was dropping backwards there. Let's take a look on the replay as we'll see that move, fantastic as it was from Gianmarco Fiducci. It was Rietveld that was under pressure from Risto Capit. And I saw Risto Capit making this attempt on Gianmarco Fiducci a couple of laps ago, dives it to the inside into T4, and that move is a solid no out of 10. Thankfully, Rietveld is able to keep going, but if we ride on board with Jovski here, Jovski cops a pretty big whack through the middle of this, so hard on the brakes there, and Jovski coming in like a ton of bricks through the middle of it. There's side by side, there's big damage on those two cars. They are going to be in for a bit of pretty long ride to the end of the race. And what was looking so good for RHE, like I say, in a click of a finger, is just now looking not awful. I mean, they're still running 8th and 13th, but it's looking much worse than it was not that long ago, especially when tight rivals for them, Burst, are up in 3rd and 4th.
Yeah, Burst doing a great job here in terms of points, if it would finish like this, right? But we still have 45 minutes to go, so it's not done and dusted just yet. But yeah, with damage being out there and being a thing, they can be lucky that the front wheel is still on, front wing is still on, and that is another car going off, and that is Payage. Now it also gets worse for Bono House as his teammate drops down the order, and with that, the first 2 teams both kind of struggling to get 2 drivers in the big scoring positions, and Payage dropped all the way down. I mean, that is super far away now from the top 10. Not really in contention for that at all anymore. And with that, the door is wide open for either RHE Esports to make this a really good race for them, or Varga Sim Racing and Burst Esports, because the other team in there, currently on 5th, would be Williams Esports, and I don't really see them being able to be in the top 10 here.
We'll ride on board with Cinchik to see, I think, a bit of a spin out of him coming down into the penultimate corner of the race. Oh, this is where he sent off potentially. Oh, so it was going to be a spin from Payich. That's no fault to Cinchik. He was there and given room. It was the spin going for Payich, and nearly corrected it, did Payich, and just went a bit too far. And then in the grass, lights it up just a little bit too much, and the rear end's going to step out once more. Disaster Payich, he's dropped down another couple of positions as well. 20th and 21st of Jordis Veers and Kasper Stolzer have got through, so he's now in 22nd position, and it is going to be a long day for Mercedes. Now, tyres as well, we can maybe go for a pit stop, maybe get some fresh tyres. I don't know if you can see right now, but you can see that Bunner House is closing in on Kevin Siggy. There's a second between them. Do you know who has the fastest lap of the race? Manuel Biancalilla, down in 24th spot at the moment, fastest lap of this wet weather Indianapolis Grand Prix. I mean, proof that wet weather conditions if you come in, get some fresh tyres, maybe some of these drivers might come for a bit of a recovery drive later in the session. It's hard to tell, but right now it's not looking good for some. It's looking great for others, though. House right back involved.
Yeah, he definitely catches up to Kevin Siggy, but also, if you look up the tower on the left, you see that Fiducci is in 5th. We saw him overtaking Rietveld in the great maneuver, but his teammate Nuno Pinto is also in 14th by now. So for Ford Stiller, that is a good... Is he really spinning in the car again? That is a horrible day for a Mercedes-AMG Petronas Esports team in terms of what happened in the very first minutes, with Bono House basically showing his first mistake maybe since the beginning of time. Who knows? Probably never happened to him previously in an open-wheeler car, but he is quicker than Kevin Siggy, and we saw Kevin previously already struggling with keeping Jurowski away. I highly doubt that he can do it with Bono House now.
I've seen a mistake from Bono House, which to say that I've been watching
back then,
race
1920.
I've been watching him race for like 12 years. Yeah, one mistake I can recall it as well. It was coming down into the going through the first Degner. The camera shot caught him. He was backwards at the second Degner at Suzuka, which is not really a good place, and obviously went straight into the wall. We've got Michele D'Alessandro and Stefanko going side by side a bit further down the order as BS Competition battling out with Williams, a team they've been quite close to in the Formula Sim Racing World Championship, as they drop down a position. Hanjowski, bit of a mistake, and there goes another position. Not a good day for the two-time GT Pro champion, as Marcel Chinchik, with a bit of a squeeze as well on the back straight, does get by the R8G driver. Sun's back out a little bit, which, by the way, makes it so much harder to drive, because the sun pokes through the spray and makes it so much harder to spot through, which is what Bono House is having to deal with right now, as he is right on the rear end of Kevin Siggy.
Yeah, it's not half a second between these two drivers, Siggy and House, but Jovski and Chinchik, that fight is also still on, as we see it on the camera. By the way, I have to say, it looks absolutely beautiful. I like this. A bit of rain, slightly blue horizon. I can get behind this. It's been an ideal race, I have to say. And so far, action is definitely there in these conditions. Patel against Dennis Jordan. So that is BS competition against Red Bull Racing Esports. And we didn't saw the Red Bull guys being too much with the action so far. So maybe Dennis Jordan can move up. That is... that's Jajowski. Yeah, with... I think he's struggling with the damage on the car, maybe, to be honest. We saw that he had the impact front, left, right, which wasn't easy at all. He's still running fairly good for that. But a car probably not in a great shape. More like, mint condition, never been abused, eBay UK style. So it's not easy to get that across the track, I'm absolutely sure.
Well, fastest man inside the top 5 last time by was Bono House, as he's closing in on sort of sister team, sort of not really. Obviously, Bono House, Redline driver, catching in on Kevin Siggy. Doesn't really care about Redline in this sense, just wants to go for the race wins himself. The second fastest man inside the top 5, though, was Gianmarco Fiducci, who's just gone for a spin in 5th place. Gianmarco Fiducci, a bit of a half spin, will rejoin. That's the yellow flag out in Sector 3. We'll catch that in a moment, as Bono House looking to the inside. No way through on Siggy, and a couple of positions dropped from Gianmarco Fiducci. First mistake of the day from the Italian, was running really, really strongly inside the top 10. Only drops a couple of spots. Decent recovery into 7th. So easy to do. I mean, we've seen those mistakes out of the very best on this grid. Siggy, though, is under so much pressure, and there is no room for a mistake from either of these two.
Yeah, I wonder, when was the last time we saw Kevin Siggy winning a pro race? Either it being GT Pro Series...
Spa, Season 3.
Well, that's quite a while ago now. No, it isn't.
Yeah.
No. GT Pro Series is in Season 4 now, right? Yeah. So it was last season, but that was only that one race. That he was capable of getting, because he was always a front runner, just he never got the championship crown in GT Pro Series, although I think he deserves one, but so do a few other drivers. It just wasn't enough yet. And now he's leading here in Indianapolis in the rFactor Formula Pro Series. But the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Esports highlight, that is Bono House, is right behind, and he probably make the move now as they're coming down the stretch. And Siggy once again covering the inside line. Bono House sending to the outside. Let's see if both are actually on the brakes. That's a chance for the crossover. They're basically the same mistake Bono House did in lap 1, turn 1, but this time it was Kevin C, so just vice versa. And with that, Bonnerhouse is back in the lead.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. I mean, just a little bit of a mistake as Fiduci's under pressure from Chinchik, who's got to the inside at T1. There might be a little bit of a brush. Nope, they do manage to get through there nicely. So easy to make contact there, and Fiduci is dropping down the order, but now has no pressure behind, and so might return to the rhythm. It's so easy to do, though, when you've lost rhythm of the race, as Rietveld's out a little bit wide just ahead of this, and Chinchik might well pick up a couple of positions in the single lap. There was one straight done, second straight there on, as we ride on board with the Team Fordzilla driver, and you can see that Chinchik, he's done a move into T1, courtesy of the mistake from the Team Redline driver, makes the move, going down on the back straightaway and up back into 6th position as Fiduci's trying to make something stick going through the S's section. Well, that one's not really going to work, and the Italian has to back out.
He's definitely showing the will of making such a move, and it'll be interesting to see if that might be on fairly soon. He was beating Jeffrey Rietfeld previously. It's not like he can't. He just needs to be in the right spot and really has to feel these conditions, because it's not easy to keep these 800 horsepower running in straight line, even coming out of the corner. So you always have to kind of balance it between enough risk to maybe get into position, but not enough to spin around the car. This, by the way, is the defensive line of Kevin Siggy against Bornerhouse into turn 1. And then he probably saw in his head a replay of what got him into the lead. And now he gave it back the same way.
Oh, Fiduci and Rietveld around. I think Fiduci and Rietveld, they might well be round, and Fiduci's round in a big way. He's stuck in the middle of the pack. We'll come back to live pictures. There is Rietveld. They came together at turn 1. Just missed that one a little bit. Coming through as well, Dennis Jordan, as well as plenty of others. But Fiduci dropped down now to 13th position, a couple behind this, as Liam DeVal has been working up his way up the order. Didn't even notice that he was in 12th place. He's now going to grab 11th from the GT Pro runner-up of last season. And Wolves GR Esports, they are making some progress here today, and they need to after a not so great last couple of rounds in the championship. Of course, they've got Jan Grankvist behind the wheel of the other car, who's actually up into 18th, making his second race start of the season, and certainly doing better than the previous race. And that's no disrespect to him. We knew it was a bit of a late signing into that one, but this is fantastic stuff as Risto Capit looking to the inside of Rietveld. Chaos and drama here at Indianapolis.
Yeah, it's a really good race, and so far, even after we saw overtakes normally in the dry, the driver who overtakes kind of gets away, right? And then that's it. We don't have that fight once again, but here we see the same fights over and over again as Risto Capit goes for Jeffrey Rietveld now into turn 1. That should be fairly simple for him, if I'm not mistaken, if he's early enough on the brakes. And no, nearly a switchback there from Rietveld. Wasn't enough, but there's Nuno Pinto going off. I think he locked up the brakes there, because we saw his rear stepping out in a very unnatural fashion. That definitely wasn't under acceleration, that's for sure.
Pinto's made up a decent amount of progress. We've got a couple of drivers into the pit lane, both of the Jean Lacey Esports Academy drivers, Jordis Veers and Kasper Stolzer, into the pit lane, going for a little bit of a gamble on strategy here. Of course, they're in the bottom positions, they're in 11th position in the championship, and one team that's doing quite well that they're battling with in the bottom position of the championship is Team Fordzilla. I was going to say this about Pinto. He's made up a decent amount of progress, and for a team that has been struggling on the team side of things, at the moment things are looking a little bit more positive, even with the mistakes as of late from Fiduci and of course Nuno Pinto. Let's see what happens here between Fiduci. It's quite tight there. Oh, I'm not necessarily sure if there was space given or if there just wasn't really an overlap, or, well, probably the best angle is to see it from on board Jeffrey Rietveld. Let's take a look. So turn 1 complete, out quite wide. I'd say respectfully probably wasn't enough room given there, and Fiduci goes for a spin and foots the biggest bill.
Yeah, I have to
agree
a hard one on that. I think that was on Fiduci, as sad as that is, because he had a great race so far, but a bit more room would have not really hurt him and his pace there. But now he had to pay the price for not giving enough room, while Rietveld down to 11th. Where is Page, though? Is it 20th or something like this? Because 22nd even. So yeah, well, we got Mercedes-AMG Petronas Esports and Team Redline first and second. Their teammates are quite far down the order. So yeah, it gives a big chance to Burst, to RAG Esports and to Varga, which by the way all line up perfectly. Burst, Varga, RAG, in terms of points, to make up the gap that's there and trying to catch up to the front runners in terms of the team championship coming out of Indianapolis.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is for Burst. They started out the season by not really having great races. We've spoken about this just a little bit. I mean, they didn't have a top 10 until the previous race of the season, where they got themselves a 5th place for Simoncic and a 7th place for birthday boy that day, Michi Hoyer. Whereas things are turning around for them. They're a well-experienced team as Fiduci's into the pit lane for Team Fordzilla. And could we see, as we're in the halfway point of the race, a few drivers diving down to the pit lane and maybe even some staying out. Who knows which way the gamble is, because right now we are deep in the unknown, ladies and gentlemen, watching here for the 4th round of the Formula Pro Series powered by Traction.gg on rFactor 2. We don't really know. It's a car that we've not really raced too much. We don't have that much data to go back on, particularly in wet weather conditions. So right now, as to what the right and wrong strategy is, there's only one way to find out, and that's by going to the checkered flag. And that is what makes this so very, very enthralling, because it's still wide open.
Yeah, watch and learn basically also for us here, and for the teams involved as well. While Yuri Toman is now right on to Michi Hoyer, who started in 3rd and then dropped down a bit and now is happy to be back in 4th. Let's see if Yuri Toman can launch an attack just now. There should be enough. He's really close. Look at that. Indianapolis giving a long stretch for him to make that move, and then you really have to be precise on the braking, otherwise you lose that position. But that was perfectly executed by Toman and looked so easy.
Yeah, Hoyer just played that one quite smart. If you watch, he was a little bit early onto the brakes down into T1 just to get out of it, to make sure that Toman can gather up the correct line. Of course, that run into turn 1, same as with making any move in the wet weather. If we ride on board with Peter Berliak trying to make the move on D'Alessandro here, 2 FSR world champions in the previous few years, 5-6 years, obviously 2015 for Peter Berliak, and gets it dived down the inside. When you go onto the inside there, it's wet weather conditions. It's very, very tricky to get the kart slowed down. And by the way, I do have to correct myself on something earlier, because I did get the correction from Alan Terzic, who should know better than me, as he was racing in GT Pro Season 3. It wasn't Spa where Kevin Siggy took that last win. Of course, he's very good at Spa and did take the first double race win in GT Pro at Spa, as Yuri Toman bailed to the pit lane, by the way. So we are seeing pit stops happening here as he's dived his way down. It was actually the Nürburgring where Kevin Siggy took that race victory in Season 3. So I was wrong. That's fine. Yuri Toman is into the pit lane, though. I wonder how many others will gamble this one as well. Or if it even is the gamble.
Yes, I think it was Aidan Millward who pointed out in chat that he doubt that he sees any driver not pitting today.
Right.
Although we always thought we have figured out the strategies of the teams, and then on race day it was completely different. The strategy that we thought is kind of like the outsider one was then in the end the strategy everyone went for, right? So for now, I don't really want to call that, because I have absolutely no clue if we see most of the drivers coming in. But what we will see is in a replay of Marko Pajic, 22nd previously. That should be that's not Liam DeWall, it's Granquist of Wolves GR Esports. I think I did a mistake there. I mean, not getting enough traction, because I lost a ton of pace there. Not really getting in, and Jeffrey Riedfeld still in a big group here, so can't really move freely, and he probably had a different game plan for this one.
We'll just say, by the way, as Yuri Toman's been out of the pit lane, in and out in quite a quick bit. Gianmarco Fiduci just set the fastest lap of the race by 1.2 seconds. Well, not by 1.2 seconds, it wasn't. Sorry, let me correct myself. It was 1.2 seconds faster than those running up towards the race lead. 1.2 seconds faster than Siggy, House, all that lot. So it was a very, very fast lap, but I think he's lost quite a bit of time, obviously, through his spins and such. Hanuyovsky is also into the pit lane. We can see Marcel Cinchik. Now, the thing is, when it comes to obviously not pitting, the fuel tank can do it. You just need to save an awful lot of fuel, which not too many, I think, will be doing. There are a couple that I think might gamble on it, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. I don't really want to blow that one wide open, but there are certain drivers that do endurance racing that may well like themselves a bit of a gamble when it comes to extending the fuel mileage. Everyone else, I think, will be pushing to the very limit, including Bonner House, who obviously has been firing in fantastic lap times with metronomic consistency, leading once again in Formula Pro and looking as strong as ever.
he's not just leading, right? He's leading by 3.5 seconds after he dropped down the order in the very first lap. And we said if someone can have such a comeback, it's Bonnerhaus, but he's even proving that it's not just the comeback of getting back in first. It's also, hey, I can build a comfortable gap easily, even with getting it on later in the race. And he's really doing a great job here. And Kevin Siggy, unfortunately, not able to go the pace of the Mercedes-AMG Esports driver. By the way, it's Mercedes Petronas AMG Petronas? Now I lost it. Normally I know. Mercedes-AMG Petronas Esports team. I got it right the entire day, and then one time I think about it, it's gone. But yeah, it's like, it's just, he's on a different level right now on every single track, even here in the wet. So just incredible.
I think I said it before, but it was Allied Racing Esports by TCS off is still the longest team name that I can think of in recent memory. But there are plenty of good ones out there when it comes to long team names, as Risto Capet has been into the pit lane, and Jiri Toman has robbed the fastest lap away from the feisty Italian of Gianmarco Fiducci, who again set some decent times down in the 17s. But with Toman's pit stop there, what he's essentially trying to do is trying to get onto the podium by jumping the two Burst Esports drivers should they come into the pit lane, as we refocus our way on Team Redline with Jeffrey Rietveld. I mean, for the Team Redline drivers, I'd almost be like, they're definitely going to be stopping. I mean, they're not going to go for anything like when it comes to fuel saving. Look at Silverstone, when they made a two-stop strategy. Oh, big snap. Who was that? Was that going a lap down? I think it was. That was so tight. It might have been Jan Grankvist going a lap down and just trying to get out of the way sideways.
Yeah, I mean, if you get out of the way, at least do it in style, right? A bit like a certain car driver on the broadcast at the weekend that didn't manage to stay on track while the camera was on him. And similar to what we just saw here. Jeffrey Rietveld still in 7th, and then Jennings Jordan right behind us. I say still in 7th. Obviously, then Jordan showing himself there and threatening Jeffrey Rietveld. Let's see what happens here. It seems like, for now, Jeffrey Rietveld is not really feeling too good in the car in these conditions.
We'll see. It's kind of one of those things, like we say, some drivers love wet weather conditions. Some drivers just don't really gel with it. For me, it kind of depends on the car. I do love myself a bit of wet weather driving. It does provide something way different than just driving in the dry. Driving in the dry is fine, but it gets a bit boring. It gets a bit stale over time. And once again, ticking off he's done a personal best lap, by the way, as Bonnerhaus. He's done a 17.7, which, yes, is a fair amount slower than the likes of Jiri Toman, who's comfortably running in the higher ends of these 16s. But to say that Bonnerhaus has just set a time that is a second faster than Siggy, has just set his personal best lap of the race. This is a drive which is more akin to the likes of Jerne Simoncic and that lot, when they get to that level of domination, or even just Bonnerhaus is a classic Bonnerhaus drive back in the day, of getting to this point where you're so in control of the race that nearly 40 minutes into the race you can just be like, I'm going to set fast lap. Fast lap for me. I'm just going to do my personal best now. Yes, the fuel's burning off, but this shows how well I'm keeping my tyres in nick, as a couple of drivers into the pit lane, Liam Duval, Martin Stefanko, all into the pit lane. I think Duval might have missed his box ever so slightly. We ride on board with the Dutchman leaving pit lane.
Yeah, leave a pit lane, hopefully without smashing it into the wall. Not as easy as it sounds. I actually saw that a few weeks ago when a team that we're good friends with in real life got a new cup car, and they managed to get out of the pits for like 50 meters, as the driver totally forgot when he came in. He already had 5 laps. Came in, one of the engineers reminded him that, hey, tires are probably cold by now, because we were chatting quite a long time in the pits. Keep that in mind. So he drove off and drove right into the wall 15 meters after releasing the limiter. So yeah, pit in and out, both can pose a challenge to drivers and teams. That's for sure.
Especially in conditions like this, it is everything in its own challenge. You cannot underestimate anything in conditions when they are as wet as this. Another driver into the pit lane being Petter Berliak. The order, I think the highest driver that has made the pit stop is Jiri Toman. at the moment, who is in 8th spot and is charging at the moment. Whether we'll see those ahead dive into pit lane, we'll have to wait and see. Again, to remind that there is no requirement for them to stop in wet weather conditions. They can go to the end should they see fit. Jeffrey Rietveld just got up into 6th position, getting past Dennis Jordan, who again, a bit of a reminder with Dennis Jordan, was a race winner here in wet weather conditions for his very first time. That was for Evolution, the team he was driving for prior to signing the contract. But actually, technically it was team before even that, because he did a season with Burst, or half a season with Burst, and then did the season with Red Bull Racing Esports, who's been a part of the team run by G2 Esports, and of course one Mr. Dennis Lind. Might be a little bit happier with how things are going for Dennis Jordan at the moment, but I mean, they're here to win. They're here to do bigger things. I don't think how their season's gone thus far has been particularly great. Lap traffic, though, causing an issue for Bonner House. That one was Jordi Veers.
Bonner House really got lucky there. I mean, that would have really hurt, right? Like, he has that great comeback, and then a back marker spins right in front of him, ending his race. That would have been a heartbreaking moment. Luckily, it did not happen. Jeffrey Rietveld against Dennis Jordan. Jordan coming around the corner a lot better than Jeffrey Rietveld, but not enough just yet to really get alongside and really threaten the red line driver.
I mean, like I said, remember what I said? Everything is a risk in wet weather, more so than normal. And so for Bonner House, he'll know that coming up against drivers going a lap down will be very, very difficult. Whilst we have some of the best drivers in sim racing here at the moment, it's still mistakes like this are very, very easy, as Jovski on the rear end of Nuno Pinto, a little bit too deep into T1, and you can see they're scrambling for grip. The Macedonian just trying to pick it up to get past the Portuguese driver of Pinto. Again, considering the position, Jovski was battling for the lead earlier in this race. He's now down in 18th spot, and you could say, oh, how the mighty fall, but that's just how these conditions are. Over an hour-long race, things chop and change very quickly. Gianmarco Viducci and Jan van der Heide are having a little bit of side-by-side ahead of this, as the Italian gets past the German and up into 12th position on his march back up the order after a half spin, a full spin, and then back to it once again post-pit stop.
Let's see what happens now that we got the last 20 minutes of the race. It was a 1 hour long one, so we got 40 minutes already in the books. And Nuno Pinto against Jovski. Definitely a fight that we did not have that often in the GT Pro Series. Back then when Jovski was still in there, because Nuno Pinto wasn't really a front runner there, although he's a good driver. His teammate, Gianmarco Fiducci, next to, I think that's Jan van der Heide.
Yeah.
Late on the brakes, but saved it and got around there.
Oh, they're going off the road though. And they're going for a spin as well as Liam de Waal. This is just ahead of this, so watch this coming through as we look at Pinto. There's Liam de Waal off in the gravel trap, as Gianmarco Viducci was side by side with Jan van der Heide running through the first couple of corners, and van der Heide is now trying to attack once again to grab 12th place off of Viducci. A lot of pressure on the shoulders of the young Italian, and the side by side, there's a bit of 3 wide. Well, I'm sure we'll catch that on replay in a moment, but there was a bit of 3 wide on that run in through T2, and all just kind of coming together and sending the Wolves GR Esports driver for a bit of a spin. Pajic under pressure from Martin Stefanko. Stefanko's been into the pit lane. This is all in that train that we were talking about. Pajic is going backwards, was obviously very backwards, right down the back end of the order, and is trying to grab some more positions whilst not pitting, etc. Trying to push this one as far as possible. But things for Mercedes-AMG Petronas Esports are really, really not looking so great right now when it comes to the Teams Championship. Whilst Bonner House is leading, Pajic once again just seeming to struggle to get into the rhythm of this series.
Yeah, at least there's definitely no story around if they want to pick up a certain Williams Esports driver in here, so we won't go that far. But he is struggling against Martin Stefanko, who is a Williams Esports driver. I really wonder sometimes if someone is scripting all of this that we see here, similar to the Silverstone crash and accident we had last time, that looked very familiar. It's just great to see that we get good action on the screen every single time. Nuno Pinto against Jovski. So that was the view back from Jovski's rear wing onto the Team Fordzilla car. But it's another fighting group that gets created here, and that will heat up over time, because we don't have that much time anymore. If you want to move up, like Martin Stefanko, and you better do it quickly. He did. He's now in 13th, and he's now trying to chase down Fiducci.
Let's take a look at this 3 wide. So you can see Fiducci in a little bit too deep there, and Jan van der Heijden's going for the cutback and trying to pick up all the positions. And I mean, I'm not going to pick out who's to blame in that one, because let's be honest, it's real messy. But let's be real, 3 wide into turn 2. Not the wisest idea. And either way, going for a spin there was Liam DeVal, so I'm sure race control might take a look at that. Jimmy Allison might have a view over it post-race, as there's still plenty to go on, and Pajic is going backwards. He's now got Berliak on the rear end of him as we ride on board with Dennis Jordan and Rietveld as well in that tight battle. The 2 GT Pro champions, by the way, have switched positions with Jovski and Jan van der Heijden, and Jovski taking over 14th position, so still quite a bit going on. And by the way, Bonnehaus, another personal best lap of the race as he extends his lead another few tenths.
But he's not extending it to Kevin Siggy, he's now extending it over Journey Simoncic, who's now in second, as Kevin Siggy dropped down to 3rd.
His pace is gone.
Yes, it really seems like he had a great start, a good run. He challenged Bonnehaus at least once. That was what we were waiting for, right? We said maybe if you can apply early pressure, it will help. But he's now not as quick anymore. He tapped a back marker. Yeah, that's it. And then Simoncic got around. By the way, I really have to say that just looked fantastic. Look at that. Can we have more rain races but with the blue sky?
I think that might have been Ibrahim Khan who made contact there. Who'll be having the rule book thrown at him. Don't make contact with leaders and such. Was speaking good things of his racecraft not too long ago, but that is a solid no out of 10. Of course, it must be said that Ibrahim Khan is jumping in, bias alert, jumping in for Danny Kish, who had a little bit of an incident in real life at the moment. He's fine, he's recovering. We'll obviously send our best wishes off to Danny Kish, and hopefully he can return for the penultimate round of the season in a couple of weeks' time. But Ibrahim Khan being a bit of a super sub, but being a little bit in the way there of Kevin Siggy and costing Siggy a position, and that one will not be looked down upon very well at all. And so, there might be a bit of a slap on the wrist on the way, or potentially even more so as the battle for 6th continues to rage on. But look at the train behind, and the 2 Varga sim racing drivers are right there. We'll see this one on board with Ibrahim Khan. So you've got a little bit of a mistake, bit of a lock-up. Oh no!
He used it. Don't tell me he got back on the track and got Kevin Siggy.
He did. No, Ibra. Oh my goodness!
But on the other hand, it took a while until Kevin Siggy was side by side. So you could also say Siggy did not really leave enough room, right? I would love to see that from Kevin's perspective. I hope that's the next replay we get, because now I really want to look into this, as I can't really see Ibrahim Khan doing a super blunt mistake like this. So I think it was just Siggy not leaving room.
It was pretty single-digit IQ levels there, at least from what I could see on Ibra's point of view, because regardless, you don't rejoin the race circuit like that, not straight onto the apex of a corner. Sorry, that's just not acceptable. And like I say, I think even more so. I didn't think it was quite that bad. I thought it was bad, but not that bad. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. Dennis Jordan, though, all over the rear end of Ibra. But as I was saying, it is all about the charge of the 2 Varga sim racing drivers that are on the rear end, because Toman, the highest placed driver that has made a pit stop and wants some better positions, was starting to challenge for the podium positions a little bit earlier in the race on the rear end of Jerne Simoncic. A bit of a snap on the rear end as well from Dennis Jordan for good measure, and here he goes. Yuri Toman gets to the inside of the Red Bull Racing esports man, also pulling out in the background. That was Marcel Cinčić, just saw pulling over there. The slipstream though and the straight line speed for Red Bull is just about good enough to keep Varga Sim Racing at bay.
See which replay we get. That is the Kevin Siggy replay. I wonder. The problem is that obviously Kevin Siggy really came in from far outside there. I would say this is not a 100% thing on just one driver. So it was Ibrahim Khan not really going for the right way. Well, we see a great fight here between Toman and Dennis Jordan. Where Toman once again has to slot behind and in front of his teammate Michal Cinčić. But yeah, I have to say what Jimmy Ellison now put in the chat, and that's why I wanted to see the onboard. With him being so far outside, he did not see Ibrahim Khan. But I wonder what Ibrahim was able to see when getting onto the track, right? Because he wanted to obviously get back as quick as possible, but as someone coming from one of the exit lines, basically back on the track, he should make sure he can do that without touching someone. But I just think that both had been in a bad spot to see each other, and that led to what we saw there.
Visibility is poor.
Is that onto Yuri Toman and Dennis Jordan? Wow, Toman went in there with a Tokyo drift, basically. That's a bit further across the ocean, though, man. Not the same continent, but it was great looking, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, in that sense, of course, the visibility, obviously, if you're running especially on single screens and such, the visibility is very, very poor. In the sense your FOV is quite low. So, yes, you do have that to worry about, especially with the relatives and stuff not really telling you when the leads are coming through. I do get it. But at the same time, I mean, you've got a guy a lap down rejoining the racetrack straight onto an apex, basically, which is not great, whilst a leader's coming through, maybe didn't know, whatever it is, what it is. I say you can rule it as a racing incident. I can kind of see it from both ways. If it were me, I'd potentially throw a little bit of the rulebook again to the back markers. In that sense, it does seem to me that it's a bit more of on Khan's shoulders, but let's be real, Siggy did go straight for the apex whilst the car was there. It'll be something which will be looked at post-race, I am absolutely sure. What we do know, though, is when we're speaking of pure fact, Siggy has lost the second place to Simičić and lost a lot of time in all of that, and focusing again on facts. The Team Redline not very good in the Teams Championship. More points lost, as we'll see once again. Another Ruben Carrera-Alvarez slow-mos. You'll see Yuri Toman just slipping on through there, and Dennis Jordan re-picking up the place. And still, Yuri Toman is not able to get through. Jeffrey Rietveld is playing this like an absolute master right now. Is just giving the slipstream to Dennis Jordan and basically making sure that they're able to keep at bay the two Varga drivers, and passing in these conditions is very, very difficult. And when they've also got this fight that goes up to fifth place, because Mohammed Patel is back involved in it as well, setting times for BS competition, and a decent result at the moment he is in. Right now for Varga, this could be quite frustrating.
Yeah, although I have to say Rick Felder's doing a great job still being there and being in sixth position. Although I would say he should normally take down Patel easily in terms of the performance that Rietveld put on in the previous races. But here in the wet, seems to be a completely different story, and that means that Patel is in the top 5 and Rietveld isn't.
Indeed, I mean, it's like I say where we are in this. I mean, I know it's again beating the same drum, but it is so difficult out there. It's Yovsky. I think Yovsky's having an issue. Yovsky is round once again. That was the yellow flag out in sector 3. Yovsky is dropping down the order, and for the driver who was on the podium a couple of rounds ago, he's a lap down now. He was on the podium a few rounds ago. He was fighting for the podium this round. He is a lap down in 20th position, with pressure coming from Yordis Vias as well on the rear end. What a day it has turned into for various drivers. Not that of Erhan Yuyovsky. Another yellow flag out in sector 3. That one's for Valeriano as another driver drops down the order. Whilst it's hard, I think drivers, rather than getting more comfortable in it, they're getting more overly confident, overly comfortable, overly aggressive at this point in the race, as they're trying to fight for whatever they can. They're just making mistakes, and that's why we don't see those from Bunnerhaus, from Jerne Simičić, from Kevin Siggy at the moment, where they're just driving around by themselves. Let's take a look on board onto the grass. Just understeer kicked in, straight out onto the grass, and Erhan Yuyovsky, another mistake.
Yeah, it's really sad, considering where he had been at the beginning of the race, right? He was chasing down Kevin Siggy, was meant to be the new leader of the race, and now he's just really struggling over and over again. And I think it's now down to the mental side of racing, right? I mean, you have been in a great position. Okay, you do one mistake, you want to come back, or you get unlucky once. You try to have that big comeback. I mean, Erniowski proved that time and time again that he can. But now, with everything that happened to him, it's probably really hard to stay focused and actually doing a good race.
getting a good race in these conditions, I say it's one of the toughest things you could do in sim racing when you have the very best making mistakes. I mean, it's always well and good to sort of, I'd say point and laugh. I don't think anyone's really doing that, but it would be easy to be like, oh, look at them, easy mistake. The thing is, when you slide like this, when you start to slide, if you have an off, like say for example, Jovski's, or best example is actually Payic's one, where he had that off coming down into the final corner, had a little bit of contact with Rietveld as well, and was off in the grass. And we saw him there trying to recover, and then went for a spin again. And it's so easy to be like, oh, well, silly driver. Obviously, he doesn't really know what he's doing. That's not true. It's when you're on the grass, you've got less grip than the wet racetrack, which already has no grip. It's so easy to make those levels of mistakes and the such. I will say, when it comes to fast up the race, because it's one thing that I do always like to focus on in these kind of things, where first round of the season, fast up the race came from outside of the top 10. It does seem as though we are going to see that once more, because Johan Jovski has the fastest lap of the race. He's obviously down in 20th position, a 16.4. Ages ago, right? Obviously post pit stop, but riding on board with Bonnehaus, you can see just how calm, how smooth, how collected this is. He's just set a personal best on the previous lap, coming across the line to complete the 42nd lap of the race. Did lose a bit of time on that lap to Jene Simičić, but still just looking bulletproof, comfortable, bulletproof, consistent. And this battle still raging on. As Rietveld, by the way, didn't catch when that happened. Rietveld has got through on Mohammed Patel.
And by the way, since we had a discussion a few times throughout the broadcast, as in, will there be drivers that even pit at all? Yep, there have been a few, definitely. And then the question was, or it was pointed out in the chat, like, probably no one will dare to not pit. It's only 5 minutes in the pit, and we still have a ton of drivers that didn't went to the pits. So, yeah, once again, we got both strategies, and both are racing each other. That's the good thing to see. And it just proves that the format of this championship is working really well for us in the broadcast and for everyone watching. So, let's see. Dennis Jordan still under pressure by Yuri Tillman and Marcel Cincin. While looking at Mohamed Patel, in front of that is Jeffrey Rietveld, who unfortunately we missed how he got around the BS competition driver. But he did, and with that he's back into the top 5, making sure that Kevin Siggy has a bit of a backup in terms of points, compared to Bonnehaus, whose teammate is 19th and a lap down.
Yeah, I mean, for like I said, for some drivers like Simičić and Hoyer, those are the ones that I would have been more alluding to. This is how the pass happened. You can see a little bit of back markering in the way. That one might be Valeriano. I'm not really sure which one of the Musto GD Esports cars it was. And there we go, just coming straight through. It wasn't. It was actually Bianca Lilla. Oh, no, it was Valeriano. And yeah, just a little bit too hot in there and a bit too much of a mistake. And yeah, the issue, you can see it there clear as day, and with Rietveld making up the place, it's great for the points. To see the likes of Dennis Jordan not pitting, though, again, the endurance background from them, they know how to sort of make these conditions work and just deal with a slightly heavier car, as that position was in the hands of Rietveld, but I'm not necessarily sure for how much longer, as BS Competitions Mohammed Patel wants to get back involved in this. It wasn't a great last couple of rounds for Mohammed Patel. He's finished 15th in the previous 2 races, but did start out the season at Spa with a top 5 in 5th place, and you can see there, just getting back through. Very, very nice indeed.
Yeah, he's having a great race, and I think he got a fair chance of getting back onto Rietveld, that's for sure. Fiducci against De Alessandro. Fiducci on the outside, they definitely touch, but it seems like both can keep it going. But there's a Williams Esports car just coming through here. Look at Petar Bielak just making it his own move, trying to get involved. And it seems like it worked out for him. I did not see, unfortunately, standings right after, so I'm not quite sure, but I think Petar Bielak actually went through.
Yeah, I think no, he still sat in 14th. It's like I say, it's. I mean, Petar Bielak is, how much experience has he got in sim racing, and banging his way up the order, always does so. One of those fantastic drivers, took the first ever race win for my team back in the day, back in 2014. So big shout out to Petar Bielak. Big. That was the win that made him the driver he was. That was before he won an FSR World Championship. So I'll take all of my credit for that one. A fantastic driver in himself, of course, but not really having I said this for a few drivers, not really having the season that they would have wanted. But you could copy and paste that to quite a lot of drivers on this grid, as he is very close to passing D'Alessandro. Focused on Rietveld, though, is not able to retake the position on BS Competitions. Mohamed Patel, Dennis Jordan still sat there, Toman still sat there, Marcel Chinchik still sat there. This train, whilst it's changed a couple of times, has always sort of returned in equilibrium to this.
Still 2 minutes on the clock, 2:10. We'll really go into details here, and I guess we can say that Bonnehaus, if he's not throwing the race away himself, then probably no one will catch up on those 7 seconds he currently has over Johnny Simoncic. So that one is done and dusted, but there's so many fights still going on, and one is definitely the fighting group around Patel, Rietveld, and then there's Jordan again with the 2 Varga sim racing drivers right behind. Is that's Kasper Stolze probably, or Jordi Sveers? It should be Stolze, I think. And they got out of the way there, ensuring that he's not part of any of these fights and not getting in the way. Talking about that, there is a Rocket Sim Sport car. I think that was Ibrahim Khan once again being right in there. And luckily, no one spun around this time. But that looked fairly tight, I would say.
I mean, as much as I did be pretty harsh, as Berliak's going to get the move on D'Alessandro into T1, although I'm not 100% sure if it will be fully completed by the time they've slammed onto the brakes. D'Alessandro going for the cutback with BS Competition on Williams around the outside at turn 2, maybe making that one stick. The answer to the question is no right now. We have just started, by the way, the final lap of the Indianapolis Grand Prix. Just shows how dominant Bonnehaus has been. Fantastic form that he has laid out upon us as we fight with Chinchik and Toman. Being a back marker in these conditions, I mean, being a back marker anyway is actually quite a tall order. And whilst I've slammed Ibrahim Khan a little bit earlier, being back markers in
is he driving one-handed, Lewis?
Is hard. Yeah, I think he's all right. I think he's cruising at the moment. He'll be with Tian.
Look at him. It looked like he was driving one-handed. I hope he isn't.
He's very. I mean, this is it though. Either way, he just looks calm and collected, and rightfully so, because for the first ever season in Formula Pro here on rFactor 2, powered by Traction.gg, we have had a dominant form man, and it is, of course, Mercedes-AMG Petronas Esports, and it is, of course, Bonnehaus. The battle for 6th will rage on for another few corners, and we'll see if there's going to be any switches once again. But here at the Brickyard, Bonnehaus is going to make it 4 from 4, total domination. He dropped back in the early stages, but the Dutchman was not to be denied today. It's Haus on top from Simoncic across the line in second for his first podium of the season, and Kevin Siggy keeps up his 100% ratio of jumping onto the roster. Michi Hoyer with a fantastic drive to 4th place, and then this battle, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, as you've got there the dive from Varga Sim Racing of Yuri Toman to the inside of Dennis Jordan, makes that one stick, opposite lock collected by Marcel Chinchik. Toman out wide again, Dennis Jordan back through, and Varga's going to have a drag race to the line.
Yeah, they're once again bringing the action to the line, actually. I'm not quite sure if Toman actually let Dennis Jordan pass here once again. Maybe they had a bit of contact, I'm not quite sure, because it did look to me like he was braking too late. Johnny Simoncic obviously will be very happy about his second position, but as what Chet often points out, the house always wins. And that's kind of what happened here again. Bonnehaus, as he said, he dropped down to 4th. I think in between he was shortly in 5th as well. And then from there on, he was hunting the leader down. That was Kevin Siggy at that moment. And then he created a gap of over 7 seconds before crossing the line. Here's the big winner. That is the replay of Marshall Chinchik. That was his teammate Yuri Toman making the move onto Dennis Jordan. Oh, he lost the rear. I think I saw it in the... that is a very interesting end to the replay. I think he actually lost the rear there real quick. Yeah, he did. We saw that. He tried to turn it into the apex and then lost a bit of traction on the rear, started sliding, corrected it immediately, and then obviously gave room there for Dennis Jordan to go through, get back his position, and with that, Yuri Toman and Marshall Chinchik both had to slot behind the Red Bull Racing Esports driver. But to me, that's really interesting, because that was a fight that probably went on for nearly an hour. It was always the same drivers in the same group.
at least half an hour post pit stop. Once Varga had caught up, they just weren't able to make the progress through. And it just shows that Indianapolis in wet weather conditions always provides an interesting race, and no move was being made from Varga there. It was super tight though, and love a good race, but Bonnehaus dominant again.
It definitely is, and seems unstoppable right now. The only thing, and that's the major factor here, keep in mind the rFactor 2 Formula Pro Series is a team-based championship. And if we look at team standings, there still is a chance for a lot of other teams to take the championship here. So even though I would say no one stops Bonnehaus probably from becoming the driver champion with only 2 races still to go, as this was round 4 of the championship out of 6, there's still a chance for probably not Varga Sim Racing, but for Burst Esports to get involved there, for Team Redline to be involved, and for Roman Grosjean Esports to also take the crown as the winning team. So Page really has to get his stuff back together and support Bonnehaus in the attempt of crowning Mercedes-AMG Petronas Esports as the first winning team in the new series.
Well, I mean, like I said, yeah, you're absolutely spot on there. When it comes to the driver side of things, Bonnehaus is as near as makes no difference at this point, undefeatable. He's not a driver that makes mistakes, and even when he does, he's able to recover from them, as we've seen today. And that is a trend that I think we'll see over the next couple of rounds. I can see him genuinely winning the next 2 races. Now, a lot of drivers and a lot of teams might sit there and huff and be like, oh, it's boring then, isn't it, if the same driver's winning all the time? But again, you're absolutely right. This is a team-based championship. Our focus on what happens on the team side of things, which realistically, the consistency of another team comes to fore, and that is Team Redline. They've always been knocking in the good results, and for Jeffrey Rietveld, maybe not getting past Mohamed Patel and completing that move might be a little bit of a hard one to swallow, especially with Burst scoring quite well. But realistically, they've scored well over the previous few rounds where Burst haven't, maybe, and where R8G have struggled a couple of times. For Redline, this is actually looking really good. It can change around if Page was to, I mean, think of it this way, if they finish 1-2 for the next couple of races, Mercedes are right back into the team side of things, but it's looking good for Redline on the teams.
Definitely, they always ensure that they have a comeback and that there's a proper team result, right? Jeffrey Rietveld today, he got himself up closer to the front runners once again, so that was a good race. But what I saw from the previous race is Kevin Sicky's always very quick in the first third of the race, and then he kind of drops off pace, which is really unlike him normally, right? If we look at the GT Pro Series side of things, he's someone that makes move on the very last lap that really is a threat until you see the checkered flag. And here in the Formula Pro Series, he's always kind of dropping off and then is just defending for the rest of the race. And since everyone is running the same car, it's definitely not down to BOP or any other shenanigans and magic applied to sim racing. It's just his current pace, right? So there is still room of an improvement for Redline, and I think if they get it right one race, they could even be potentially second, third, first and second. Let's be real, as we now know also Bonnehaus does a mistake. Normally comes back and penalize everyone else, but he does mistakes.
I mean, these things happen. The thing is the mistakes happen, and he's come back from it. You'd be hard pressed to see that mistake yet another time from Bonnehaus, but obviously, it's a fair season. We have no idea. Let's take a look at the order then, as Bonnehaus takes his 4th consecutive race victory in the Formula Pro Series, powered by Traction.gg. But Jerne Simoncic joins him on the podium with Kevin Siggy up there for yet another time. Mitchie Hoyer, a fantastic race up in the 4th position. And then we had that tight fight behind between Mohamed Patel, Jeffrey Rietveld, Dennis Jordan, Yuri Toman and Marcel Chinchik for the what was the top 10 for quite a while. Ended up being the inside the top 9. Risto Capit rounding out the top 10. Martin Stefanko, Gianmarco Verducci, big shout out up inside the top 13 in the top half of the order, and a fantastic race it was, just leading over the line from Petr Berliak. But Verducci's qualifying early. He might be a little bit disappointed after dropping down and was running so well up inside the top 5 in the early stages, but it is what it is. There are plenty of drivers that might well see themselves a bit disappointed with how the race went. Michele D'Alessandro and Liam Deval, Nuno Pinto and Alex Siebel in 17th position, and then we get to Erhan Janiowski. Fastest lap of the race, but still big disappointment for the Macedonian after qualifying really quite well, after running really well, after challenging for the lead in the earlier stages, down the order in 18th, with Pejic fighting for the championship for Mercedes-AMG Petronas in 19th position. Jan van der Heide just 20th, and a bad day for Rocket Sim Sports with Jordi Sveers, Manuel Biancalilla, Ibrahim Khan and Valeriano all finishers. A retirement for Kasper Stolzer on the final lap of the race, finishing technically just ahead of Jan Grankvist, who was running very well earlier and then dropped down to 2 laps down on the race leaders, but only a single retirement, which in the consideration that over the previous couple of races we didn't have any retirements at the Nürburgring. We only had one retirement here at the very last moments of the race. Got a pretty good grid out here.
Definitely. We've got a grid on our hands. We've got amazing teams. And now we see what we had been talking previously about. Team Redline now leading the championship here in the rFactor 2 Formula Pro Series powered by Traction.gg in front of Mercedes-AMG Petronas esports team. Although there might be penalties applied, although I don't think it changed anything in the top 3. But just saying, 1,411 points for Redline and 1,408 points for Mercedes. Right behind might be a bit too much when we consider how tight the gaps are in terms of scoring points in this championship. Burst Esports in 3rd, in front of Varga Sim Racing. Obviously, Burst had a great race with Michi Hoyer and Simoncic even being 2nd. And RAJ Esports, they dropped massively from 3rd to 5th due to what happened to Janiowski.
Yeah, it's like I say, it's a bit of a shame. Could have been a great day for RHG, but alas, it is not. I mean, to be fair, I'm surprised. Again, the team standings is that close after a day like that from Pejic. I would have thought the gap would have been much, much larger than just the 3 points, but that's how a win changes your fortune. In the driver standings, it is Bunnerhaus leading by a country mile, but 4 consecutive podiums from Kevin Siggy keeps him involved in the mix, and there are plenty of results in that in sim racing and motorsport, where drivers just finished on the podium consistently, and one mistake is all it takes to unravel the championship. And with 2 rounds still to go at 2 very, very difficult circuits, mind, who knows what will happen. Jeffrey Rietveld might be a little bit disappointed not to be on the podium. Only 2 podiums to his season thus far, but still 3rd in the championship. Janiowski could have been a big day, could have been moving up in the 2nd of the championship. Unfortunately, has to settle for 4th with Chinchik, Simoncic, Hoyer, Patel, Toman and Dennis Jordan rounding out the top 10. So it's just how it goes. Look at where Pejic is, 13th in the standings. I don't want to be that guy that just slams a driver constantly, because I don't think that's particularly fair. Pejic is a quality driver, just has not been having the season, has not been getting to the grips. That's whether it's through bad luck or just having a bad day like this in some of the hardest conditions you could ever face in sim racing.
And we saw him there. He doesn't have a single podium to his name so far in the season, while Redline with Siggy makes sure that there's a podium every single time, but so does Bunnerhaus, obviously, with winning all the races. And Jeffrey Rietveld also got 2 podiums to his name, right? So that does not look too bad at all. While we see low-scoring driver Michel D'Alessandro, 340 points so far, did not score in Spa Nürburgring. I think he wasn't even driving there. No,
it was Alan.
Not mistaken, it was Alan Terzic replacing him there. Nuno Pinto, quite surprising to me, only a 19th. He could have scored a bit better today at Indianapolis, but unfortunately it did not end that well for him. Gianmarco Fiducci, also another one that we pointed out previously, had a great race here at Indianapolis. Kudos to him. That was an awesome showcase of skill. So definitely a driver to keep in mind. And so is Johnny Simoncic, who is only 6th in the driver individual standings, but came 2nd here with 180 points at Indianapolis. And with Zandvoort and Monza still to come, there are a few points to grab. And we're definitely having interesting tracks for that, especially when we have the final of the season in the iconic Monza and then the iconic start into Turn 1.
Look at the stats there. Obviously, the 4 wins from House dominating that top bit. But then outside of that, things are a little bit more spread. Look at the fastest laps, for example. Jajowski, Jordan, Rietveld, House, they've all got one. Top 5s are a bit all over the place as well. It's been one of those seasons, it's been up and down. If you exclude the leader, it's been up and down all over the place. But with it being such a championship, again, one mistake can realistically ruin your season. And when you go to a track like Zandvoort, which is up next, which is an incredibly difficult venue. I mean, imagine if it's wet there. Whew, we are in for an interesting one. It's a hard track regardless. Very, very difficult to keep consistent on, obviously, with the banking and such that we have there now. Obviously making it correct for these kind of cars. I think we are actually in for quite a good race. It will be tight and it will be a strategic affair. It should be very interesting.
Yeah, not easy to overtake a Zandvoort. I was commentating on the race there yesterday, and it's a great track to watch, especially as it kind of feels like a roller coaster going through the dunes at the beach, right? So it is appealing, and it will be great in these open wheelies in the rFactor 2 Formula Pro Series powered by Traction.gg. So that will happen in 2 weeks' time. If you're wondering now what to do with your time until then, there is still the rFactor 2 Formula Challenge Series this Friday, where you probably will see Adam Millward racing again. So the man, the myth, and the voice that you heard on the previous pre-show of tonight's stream, you will see him in the car on Friday. Don't miss that. That will be a good race, actually. A ton of action there as the drivers all push to actually make it into the Pro Series that you saw today. And then next Monday, that's the return, Lewis, of the GT Pro Series.
Yeah, and fantastic season. We see the previous round being at Sebring, both of GT Pro and GT Challenge in those highly wet weather conditions, the championship being thrown wide open, and of course extremely exciting action. I can't wait though to be back in 2 weeks' time for that penultimate round of the season. It's just bizarre that after such a short period of time, Rene, we're almost done with this championship, and what a season it's been so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so happy. Like back in the days when we created the GT Pro Series, as back then I was still part of Studio 397. I wanted a format and a championship that always delivered a good race, because we knew that rFactor 2 could do that, right? But obviously, due to certain format changes, sometimes championships weren't really super exciting in every race. They were over the length of the championship. But GT Pro Series then started with delivering each and every race, and so does the Formula Pro Series, right? There wasn't a single race so far where we sat here and we're like, okay, maybe the previous one was a bit more entertaining. No, it's a good race every single time. It's a good fight each and every time with awesome maneuvers and great drivers on the track. So yeah, I will miss the championship once we're done here, although it will definitely not be the last season, I'm absolutely sure. And we still got 2 races, which means there's still plenty of laps and at least 2 starts for you to commentate and go crazy into Turn 1, Lewis. So I'm absolutely sure people won't miss that the upcoming weeks. But we're done for today, and we won't return tonight. As I said, we will return on Friday with the Formula Challenge Series. Don't miss that one. Until then, thanks, Lewis, for joining me once again. And yeah, my name is Rene Butler, and I'll see you guys next time.